Thank God it's still the same old blue sky. That was the first sentence that came out of Himuyang's mouth after he opened his eyes. Wait a minute, am I missing something? Himuyang was lying on the ground as he looked up at the sky, and after a while, it finally sank in. The sky is blue indeed, but the sky in Beijing is not supposed to be this blue. He was about to reach out to his glasses and push his glasses frame back up when he realized it was no longer there. Where my glasses? But wait, how come I can see better without glasses? He burst into joy when he realized that he could finally get rid of the annoying glasses he always had to wear, but he did miss pushing the glasses frame back up like an anime character. However, he was starting to wonder where he was right now, and the look on his face gradually changed when he recalled what had happened to him. Oh, crap. I died trying to save an old man and end up dead. Why does it have to be right after I confess her? She hasn't even given me a reply yet. I died a virgin, Ayahawk. Himuyang burst into tears while still looking up at the sky. He has just confessed to the most popular girl in his school today. And the girl didn't reject him on the spot, which made him brimming with confidence since everyone who has confessed to that girl was rejected on the spot. Although he wasn't as handsome as a Hollywood actor, he was quite good-looking, so there was a chance that the girl was attracted to him. However, when he was still over the moon on his way back home, he saw an old man who was about to get hit by a car. He rushed without hesitation and pushed the old man away, but he couldn't get away in time and die in his place. I remembered pushing away the old man. I sure hope he's still alive. However, the main question now was, what kind of place was this? After looking around the dense forest around him and realized that the sky seemed completely different from the sky in his hometown, he sighed heavily, wondering where he currently was. After 2 hours, Himuyang leaned back under a big tree and let out a heavy sigh. He saw a thin man wearing ragged clothes earlier and planned to ask him what kind of place was this when that man suddenly took out a knife and rushed toward him. Himuyang was startled by this sudden turn of event and ran away without hesitation. He has been running for more than an hour and finally managed to shake the man off. That might be the so-called adrenaline rush. Himuyang was a hardcore otaku who never exercised at all, yet he managed to run for more than an hour. Rustle. Himuyang, who heard a rustling sound from the bush in front of him, immediately stood back up and watched the bush closely. As the sound was getting closer and closer, someone came out of the bush. Himuyang frowned as he silently looked at the person in front of him, who turned out to be the thin man in ragged clothes earlier and pleaded, "Dude, I'm sure this is the first time we met, so you should have no reason to hate me, yet why did you keep chasing me around? Give me a break already." The man just held the knife in his hand tighter without saying a word. Although he seemed so thin and about to fall at any second, he firmly approached Himuyang. Seeing that the man wouldn't give up even in that state, Himuyang lamented his fate. Would he die again? He screamed in his head, "Move! Run!" but his body could no longer move. After running for more than an hour, he could barely stand at this point. Every ounce of his strength left his body the moment he let his guard down earlier. Himuyang could only close his eyes powerlessly as the madman approaching with eyes full of bloodthirst, raising the knife in his hand, ready to stab him. Why am I not dead yet? Himuyang, who was confused at first, slowly opened his eyes and saw that the man who had chased him for more than an hour was lying down powerlessly in front of him, but he still clenched the knife in his hand tightly. Himuyang almost thought that it was some sort of protagonist's special privilege or something. After thoroughly confirming that the man in front of him would no longer pose any threat to him, Himuyang walked around him to have a clear look at his face, and that was when he saw the man was glaring daggers at him, scaring Himuyang shitless. Only after Himuyang realized that the man couldn't get up that he could finally breathe a sigh of relief, and asked, as I said earlier, "Why are you after me? I've never picked a fight with you, right?" The man was still glaring at Himuyang, and Himuyang almost gave up when the man suddenly answered with a hoarse and low voice, "What are you talking about? This is Kusajishi district. It's either kill or be killed here. Kusajishi district. These words echoed in Himuyang's mind that he didn't quite catch the remaining words. Kusajishi District. Soul Society. Shinigami. Hollow. Did this man just say that he might be able to see Ichigo, Hirako, Kenpachi, Ranjaku, Retsu, and the others? Isn't that? Himuyang couldn't contain his excitement and asked, Kusajishi District. Is this Soul Society? Does Godiai 13 really exist, and Captain Commander Yamamoto, is he here too? Are you a new soul or something? Of course, this is Soul Society. Godiai 13 and Captain Commander Yamamoto do exist, but I've only heard rumors about them. He looked at Himuyang with a confused look and then continued, are you really a new soul? You don't know this is Soul Society, yet you know about Godiai 13 and Captain Commander Yamamoto. That's odd. Oh, by the way, why are you in such a sorry state? Himuyang tried to contain his excitement and asked curiously about the man's situation. This is nothing new. I'm sure you'll end up in the same state within a few days. I can faintly sense the Ryuryoku within you. Those who possessed Ryuryoku will need food to replenish their strength, but that's the exact thing we lack here in Kusajishi District. Even I had a hard time finding food, so it shouldn't take long for you to turn into Reisher just like me. I don't know why you're so excited after knowing that it is Kusajishi District, but one thing for sure is you will die soon, either killed or starved to death. The powerless could only wait for their death in this ruthless world. Especially people with Ryuryoku like you that might attract Hollow. Who knows, a Hollow will eat you. Himuyang, who was excited at first, suddenly shivered after realizing the situation he was in. He realized that this world was not only about the sexy Ranjaku, gentle Retsu, tsundere Soifun, ridiculously cute Inoue, but also strong terrifying Kenpachi, villainous Aizen, and various Hollows. What can I do to stay alive? Himuyang could only feel that his future was bleak as he looked at his weak limbs. Noticing the distressed look on Himuyang's face, a smile was drawn on the corner of the man's mouth. It's survival of the fittest, that's all. You have to be harsh on yourself and show no mercy to your enemies if you want to survive in this ruthless world. Seeing the constantly changing expression on Himuyang's face, the man flashed a playful smile. It's either kill or be killed, simple isn't it? Himuyang began to wonder whether that was really the case as he recalled the original plot in the anime and concluded that the man was right. Kusajishi and Zaraki District, in particular, was the most chaotic district in Rukongai. Himuyang also knew that these districts reeked of blood from the mass killings on a daily basis. How could he even survive in a place like this? Cough cough, a burst of cough snapped Himuyang back from his deep thought. What is happening to your body? Himuyang panicked. The man in front of Himuyang gradually became transparent and turned into Reisher, dissolving into Soul Society. This is the fate of every soul, turning into Reisher. I'll become one with this world. Ah! This warm feeling. It's as if being embraced by my mother. Let me tell you one last thing before I go. It's more like a warning, though. Don't even try to step foot into the Zaraki district if you value your life. Be careful of the beast of Zaraki. That one is a real beast. Even Hollow is like a cute plushie compared to him. Beast of Zaraki. Is it Kenpachi? Himuyang murmured. Seeing the person in front of me turned into Reisher and dissolved into the Soul Society without any trace left, how would anyone know that someone just died? Besides, dissolving into Soul Society. Could that be called happiness? Although the man earlier has chased Himuyang for more than an hour, even though he has never done anything to him, watching him slowly disappearing into this world was heart-wrenching. This was his first time seeing someone died right in front of him. Clang! The sword that the man earlier held so tightly fell into the ground because no one held it in his place. Apparently, that sword was the only thing in the man's possession. Picking up the sword, Himuyang looked at the sword that almost took his life. It seemed like an ordinary sword, the so-called Asachi, Himuyang secretly thought. Muyang said determinedly as he picked up the sword. In any case, I had no intention to die in vain like you. Even if I do end up dead, I will at least leave something behind so people know that I used to live in this world. Of course, I want to live a good life if at all possible. I want the whole Soul Society and Hueco Mundo to know my name. I want my enemies to tremble when they hear my name. Muyang seemed so cool with a determined look on his face when all of a sudden. Growl, growl, the growling sound coming from his stomach ruined the moment. Of course, I have to do something about this first. Muyang said while rubbing his stomach. Tap 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 tap, a footstep sound was getting closer and closer. Shwa shwa shwa, two pairs of greedy eyes vigilantly watched the new visitor. However, after realizing who it was, one of them immediately hid himself looking completely terrified, while the other one was ready to jump out anytime. Seeing his companion was so gung-ho in robbing the visitor they just saw, he immediately pulled his companion back and scolded in a low voice, "Are you trying to get us killed? If you want to die, go ahead and die on your own." The sound of the footsteps suddenly disappeared, followed by a sharp gaze sweeping through the area. Realizing this, the man who just scolded his companion earlier was like being choked by invisible air. Not a word could come out of his mouth, and a few drops of sweat dripped down from his forehead. The place became dead quiet as the sound of the footstep disappeared, even the atmosphere suddenly became heavy, only repressed breathing could be faintly heard. As the footstep sound once again echoed in that place and slowly disappeared in silence, the atmosphere also returned to normal as the sharp gaze was no longer eyeing the surrounding. There were other people other than those two in that place, but even after the footstep sound disappeared in the distance, those people still waited for a while before they sighed and returned to their own activity as if afraid of something. Phew, one of the two men earlier sighed in relief as he wiped the sweat on his forehead. After catching his breath, he then scolded his companion beside, "Are you that eager to die? We're almost killed because of you. Be careful next time, don't bite more than you can chew, especially that person just now. Don't even think about mugging him, just lay low the next time you see him." "Brother, who is he? Why are you so afraid of him? His eyes are indeed scary, but I think he's no big deal." "Pa!" The man smacked his companion's head. "Damn, keep your voice down, will you? No big deal. Who almost peed his pants earlier?" The man asked mockingly, and his companion's face suddenly turned red. As the man gazed at where the silhouette disappeared, there was a trace of fear mixed with admiration in the man's eyes. "That man is called Swordsman of Kusajishi. He is Swordsman of Kusajishi. The man who beheaded 100 people with sheer power." The little brother said, flustered when he heard the boss. "Yes, he is the one who killed 100 people in a rage. This happened a few years ago, but it still feels like yesterday. Unlike us, he's the man who was born for greatness. That guy has gotten stronger again. I hate to admit it, but we stand no chance even if we gang up on him now." "How can you say that? We lost the moment we give up, you know." "Stop it, Yingsuk is right. We can barely stand the moment we felt the murderous intent earlier. Besides, he was no longer in the same league as us. He was basically as strong as a ranked officer Shinigami, and not the low-ranked one. He was at least as strong as the 7th or 8th seat Shinigami." "What? 7th to 8th seat? You don't have a cracking joke? My eyes couldn't have deceived me. A 7th seat Shinigami once came here for a mission, and that Shinigami could barely hold his ground against him, the Swordsman. Perhaps the Shinigami underestimated him, but in any case, we are no match against him, so just forget about Makihara." "What? Brother, you? Makihara, he? Forget it. It was Makihara's fault for picking a fight against him. I have already said that he must not mess around with the Swordsman, but he thought the Swordsman is a good prey since he's a newcomer. But this brat he. Forget it, Shintai, don't talk about it anymore. Brother is right, let's stop this bullshit revenge. We can't risk our life. Besides, even brother can't deal with him, are you suggesting us to throw our lives? Okay, let's stop here. There's no need to beat yourself. It's not that we don't want to avenge Makihara, but he picked the wrong opponent this time. Ah, a silhouette that has been standing in the alley for quite a while finally showed himself. No, it was more appropriate to say that those people finally noticed his presence as the moonlight hit him. Well, if you say so, I don't mind if we leave the water under the bridge. A low voice said faintly in the alley. As the moonlight shone on him, everyone finally realized that it was the swordsman of Kusajishi, Himuyang. When Himuyang arrived at his home and had a meal, he couldn't help but remember what happened earlier. After sensing a pair of vigilant eyes monitoring him, Himuyang pretended to leave in order to let their guard down while secretly eavesdropping on their conversation. Swordsman of Kusajishi. Himuyang chuckled, since when did I have such an awesome name? People seemed too afraid when they heard my name too. This is not bad at all. As for those lot, Himuyang's eyes suddenly became frightening, recalling what happened a few years ago. On the same day he got his hands on the sword, he tried to find anyone who could provide him the information regarding his surroundings as he planned to go to Shino Academy. He passed a few small villages along the way and only stumbled upon a few people. Almost all of them were outlaws who had to risk their lives just to put a little food on their table. After surviving several life and death battles, Himuyang clearly felt that his strength increased by leaps and bounds, and not just his battle sense. After each battle, Himuyang always felt some kind of force deep within him got stronger, which Himuyang believed to be Ryatsu. At first, Himuyang complained that he had no golden finger whatsoever. He wasn't even blessed with a crazy amount of Ryatsu or other kinds of early advantage that most characters who crossed another world had. He thought that God was unfair at first until the sudden and rapid increase in his strength after his first battle. Later he learned that the more dangerous the battle was, the stronger he got as a result. He once sustained a severe injury and got twice as strong afterwards, even though that was partly because he wasn't that strong at that time, making Himuyang started to wonder whether he had scion blood within him. Himuyang made his way until he was now in the largest city in Kusajishi district, and he was basically invincible here after building up his strength along the way, but he made sure to keep a low profile. However, a guy named Makihara, thinking Himuyang was a perfect prey, decided to bring his lackeys to mug him. Himuyang tried his best to resolve it peacefully but to no avail as an inevitable fight broke out. Himuyang ended up killing Makihara and all his lackeys in a fit of rage, hence the name, Swordsman of Kusajishi. Oh, beautiful sword, can you tell me your name? Himuyang said to his sword as he wiped it affectionately as if caressing a woman's soft skin until it was sparkling. Himuyang hasn't gotten that much stronger since he killed 100 people in a fit of rage at that time. Although in most people's eyes he had become stronger, only he knew best that he simply could utilize his strength better than before, but he wasn't any stronger, and Shirkai was undoubtedly the next step to boost his power further, so he was desperate to learn his Zanpakuto's name now. After sheathing his sword, Himuyang leaned against the wall and closed his eyes while holding the sword. No one dared to actually sleep at night here in Kusajishi district since it was so dangerous that anything could happen if they fell asleep for even a second. Without anyone realizing it, a hole was ripped open in Kusajishi district, and powerful yet sinister Ryatsu surged wildly from the hole. This Ryatsu. It's hollow. Run. Aya. Help. Sensing the powerful Ryatsu left everyone in a panic, especially those who have already seen Hollow with their own eyes since they knew the Ryatsu belonged to Hollow. Look at all these foods. It's been a long time since I smelled this many delicious souls, as expected of Soul Society. The Hollow that just ripped open a hole on Kusajishi district sky was intoxicated by Soul's tempting fragrance and rushed straight towards the crowd. Himuyang sensed the Hollow's Ryatsu the moment it ripped a hole in Kusajishi district. This was the first time he sensed a Hollow's Ryatsu, and as he expected, it really was powerful and sinister. This Ryatsu is almost as strong as mine, I'm not sure I can defeat this hollow. Although I have been through several battles and become stronger since then, there's no telling how strong this hollow is or just how many souls it had devoured. What should I do, fight or escape? While Muyang was still busy considering his choice, the hollow has already rushed to the crowd. Seeing the person that hollow targeted would surely die if it got close enough, Muyang had no time to dawdle around and quickly rushed forward. Clang! The hollow's sharp claw met head-on with Muyang's Zanpakuto, igniting sparks in the process. I'll take you on, damned monster. Muyang aggravated the monster on purpose even though he realized that the hollow in front of him was stronger than him from exchanging blows earlier. Shinigami. Now that's a delicious soul you got there. Give it up and let me tear-eat that soul of yours. The hollow stuck out his tongue, excited by the thought of devouring Muyang's soul. Muyang sidestepped the hollow's sharp claw, and he was shocked when he noticed that the hollow's attack left a huge hole on the ground. If that one hit him just now, he might not be able to stand still right now. Muyang swung his sword with all his might, but the hollow managed to block his strike. He then immediately ran to the woods while provoking the hollow, "Catch me if you can, monster." Aoo! The hollow's eyes flashed with fury. "You've done it now, Shinigami." The hollow's body turned into a shadow and followed Muyang towards the woods. Swordsman of Kusajishi. He saved us and led hollow away. This should be far enough. I don't sense nearby, I'll defeat you here. Muyang challenged the hollow after confirming that there was no one nearby. Ga defeat me, the hollow laughed as if it just heard something funny. Adelaide, Koen Adelaide, you better remember that name. You're pretty strong, Shinigami, but nowhere as strong as me. I'm just one step away from evolving into Jillian, and you'll be the perfect stepping stone for that. Just one step away from evolving into Jillian. TSK, can I defeat this thing in my current state? The look on Muyang's face instantly changed. The hollow had no plan to waste any more time and struck Muyang head-on. Muyang evaded the attack as all kinds of thought entered his head, but he wasn't worried. This is all you got? That won't be enough to defeat me. Muyang, who thought his opponent was no big deal, was surprised to find the hollow in front of him turn blurry, followed by a sudden pain from one side of his body as he was sent flying while watching the hollow reappearing behind him. Muyang's eyes widened in surprise. That's Sonido. How can this be? Sonido? What is that? A voice said from Muyang's side. I'm moving so fast that your eyes can't keep up with my speed, that's all. This is the gap between our strengths. The hollow immediately struck Muyang once again mid-air, sending him to the ground. Cough cough, the impact made Muyang spurted a mouthful of blood as he fell to the ground. He shivered as he saw the hollow approaching him slowly while drooling. Am I going to die just like this? I haven't even been to Siriitii yet. I haven't even seen one of the anime's characters yet, and I'm gonna lose to this mob. No way. Muyang roared as he looked at Hollow's claw that was already right in front of him. My pride won't allow me to lose to this nobody. I haven't even seen the characters from the anime. There's no way I'm gonna die here. A faint azure Ryatsu seeped out from Muyang's Zanpakuto towards Muyang's body. I don't wanna die. I'm the man who will become Gotei 13 captain. The Ryatsu that seeped out from Muyang's Zanpakuto eventually shrouded his body, and burst forth to the sky while blowing everything around him away. What? What's with this ridiculous amount of Ryatsu? I would be no match for him even if I evolve into Minos Grande at this rate. Adelaide, who was shocked by the sudden change in Muyang's Ryatsu, how did this happen? Just who the hell is this guy? Muyang's figure emerged as the towering Ryatsu that burst forth to the sky fading. When he felt the immense Ryatsu welling within his body, he coldly smiled and rushed toward Adelaide. Now it's my turn. At first glance, there was no change to the Zanpakuto in Muyang's hand, but upon closer look, it turned out to be covered by countless lightning arcs. I'm sorry, but it's about time for you to leave this stage. You should be honored since you'll be the first to witness my Zanpakuto's power. Seeing Himuyang's overwhelming Ryatsu and Zanpakuto, Adelaide realized that he'd die in one hit if Himuyang managed to land even one blow on him. Run! That was the only thing Adelaide had in his mind. Adelaide then made up his mind without the slightest hesitation, I'm not that stupid. I'll have to escape this time, but worry not since I'll come back and kill you the next time we met, Shinigami. And by then, I'd have evolved into stronger Minos Grande. Adelaide said as he used Garganta, tearing the space in Kusajichi district open for his escape. Next time. Himuyang coldly smiled, you're so naive. There's no next time for you. As your trail of light followed Himuyang as he rushed and thrust his Zanpakuto toward Adelaide. Realizing his fate was sealed as Himuyang was already in front of him and there was nothing he could do, he could only shout desperately, no. I want to be a Vasto Lord. I don't want to die here. That was the moment when Himuyang slashed him relentlessly, destroying his ambition forever. Hee, it's finally over. Himuyang murmured as he watched Adelaide disappear and then looked at the sword in his hand. Himuyang's eyes glittered with excitement, is this my Zanpakuto? PRSSS. Himuyang suddenly vomited a mouthful of blood as his body lost balance. Himuyang hurriedly used his arms and legs to prop himself, preventing him from falling to the ground while covering his mouth. He could feel his heart beat so fast as if it was about to burst. Various pains immediately hit him one after another. What's going on? I wasn't supposed to be that seriously injured during the fight just now. Did that hollow do something to me? Damn, my consciousness is fading. Am I still going to die even after I defeated Hollow? I've finally grasped the power of my Zanpakuto, and I'm gonna die just like that? Damn it! Himuyang was losing his consciousness and fell to the ground helplessly while clenching the sword in his hand. It's the same blue sky again. Wait a minute, where am I? And I'm still alive, what about that hollow? Where is it? Himuyang was awake when he felt the sunshine and found himself was lying in the middle of a forest, but it was completely different from where he battled the hollow earlier. In addition, there was no trace of battle at all, and Himuyang almost thought that he crossed to another world once again. You finally woke up, brat. Now, stand up. Himuyang was shocked that there was someone else there, not to mention right beside him without him noticing his presence at all. He shivered at the thought that this man was an enemy since he would have died if that was the case. Who are you? Himuyang said as he turned his head to where he heard the voice earlier, but surprisingly, he found Now, there's no need to be on guard. You don't want to twist your neck by accident, do you? A playful voice said behind him. Himuyang turned his head behind immediately in surprise and finally saw the owner of the voice only to be rendered speechless. It was a breathtakingly handsome man with wavy azure hair, plain white gown. He seemed indescribably elegant with a folding fan in his hand. Himuyang was so jealous of the man's handsomeness to the point that he almost forgot what he was about to ask. Cough cough, he coughed twice to conceal his gaffe and then said awkwardly, stop popping out of nowhere randomly, will you? I almost got a heart attack here. Besides, who are you? The man at first had a bored look on his face the moment Himuyang asked that question as he stopped fanning himself with the folding fan in his hand, but immediately smiled afterward. Whether you can learn my name depends on yourself. Fuck you. I'm just being nice here, it's not like I actually want to know your name, and you just have to be all high and mighty, huh? Just who do you think you are? Himuyang said in his heart. Do you know where this is? Himuyang said hesitantly. The man smiled, you don't know where this is? Seeing Himuyang's confused look, the man folded the folding fan in his hand and finally answered, this is your inner world. My inner world? Himuyang said in disbelief as the world was filled with forest, meadow and bright sunshine. It's a beautiful world, if I say so myself, clearly I'm such not only handsome but also cheerful. Himuyang narcissistically said. Since this is my inner world, then this guy is my Zanpakuto. Are you my Zanpakuto? Muyang looked at the man with excitement, to think that such a handsome, elegant, and clearly powerful man was his Zanpakuto. Looking at Muyang's expectant look, the man slightly nodded. Seeing the man's confession, Muyang's eyes glittered with excitement and immediately asked, "Now, tell me your name." There was an awkward silence until the man said, "I refuse." A faint voice came. "What? You refuse?" "No way." "Yeah, I refuse." The man smiled, "I'm positive I heard that you don't want to know my name earlier, no?" How did you know?" "I mean, that's just a joke." "Why are you doing this to me?" "I'm sorry, can you please tell me your name?" "I refuse." "Say no more. You are not qualified to know my name just yet. This time is an exception. You only managed to draw out a small portion of my strength because you almost died, and even then, it caused a serious aftereffect on your body. It's way too early for you to wield my power, you're not ready yet." "I see, so that's the reason behind the injury earlier. I know I'm not supposed to be that badly injured from the Hollow's attack, turns out that's the cause." Muyang said as he knew that the injury he sustained during the fight with Hollow wasn't that severe. "But I still want to know your name, tell me, pretty please. You have nothing to lose anyway, right?" Muyang looked at the man that was supposedly his Zanpakuto with hopeful eyes. "Okay," Muyang's hopeful expression made it hard for him to refuse. "My name is..." I can't hear you." Seeing Muyang showed no sign of giving up, the Zanpakuto consoled him, "Don't beat yourself too hard. You're already on the right track. With some more training, you should be able to hear my name the next time you come back here." "Alright, I'll be sure to make you spill your name next time I'm here." The man folded the folding fan in his hand while watching Muyang's figure slowly disappeared from that world and said gently, "I wonder how far you'll go next time. Don't get me wrong, I simply love this world and its scenery, and if you're discouraged, terrible things will happen in this world." The moment Muyang regained his consciousness, he felt as if his whole body was crushed. He never felt this much pain before. "You finally wake up, brat." Muyang suddenly heard an elderly voice, "Youngsters these days really don't treat the elderly with respect, huh? Don't you feel bad for occupying this fragile old man's bed after I went to the trouble of saving you?" Muyang sweated when he heard how blunt this old man was. "I'm really sorry for troubling you and occupying your bed. I will get up right away." Then, Muyang sat up, giving the bed back to the old man. "Ah! God!" As soon as he tried to sit up, Muyang felt the pain intensified by a few hundred times, and he couldn't help but wail. "Ha ha ha!" The old man burst into laughter upon seeing Muyang was in pain. "Turns out you're one interesting fella, is it so painful that you feel like you're about to die?" Muyang turned his head and looked at the sly smile on the old man's face. He didn't show it in his face since the old man saved his life, but he was cursing the old man. Muyang just laughed it off, trying his best to resist the urge to beat this old man to a pulp, and said with a smile, "It's okay, I'll live." He secretly lamented his encounter with the old man, although he himself couldn't do anything about it. He was determined to stay away from this old man as soon as he recovered. He was so annoyed that he might turn the other way if he happened to see the old man again. "I'm just messing around with you, kid. It has been a long time since I saw such an interesting fella, and the look on your face just now was priceless, ha ha ha." The old man looked at Muyang said with a smile, "You sustained a severe injury, you must have pushed yourself too far. It'll take at least a few days for you to recover. You should rest here, don't worry, I'll take care of the food." The old man walked out of the door but immediately returned as if remembering something. "I almost forgot, I put your sword above your pillow. You've been holding to it really hard even when you're unconscious. It must be extremely important to you, huh?" Muyang turned his head, and after he saw his sword above the pillow, he said weakly, "Yeah, it's as important as my life." The old man smiled, and his eyes were teary as if remembering something nostalgic when he heard Himuyang's answer. He then said in a gentle tone, "Yeah, tell me about it." Himuyang was thinking about his inner world while sitting on the bed quietly. As Himuyang looked at his Zanpakuto, he secretly made up his mind, "I'll be sure to hear your name next time." "That's one hell of a face you got there, what are you thinking about?" a voice said, followed by the appetizing fragrance of porridge. Himuyang came back to his senses and said to the old man in front of him, "It's nothing serious. I'm sorry for the trouble." Himuyang felt something was off since he didn't notice the old man coming. Was it because he was so deep in his thought? My name is Himuyang. It's a little late, but thank you. I'll take you in your offer, and I'll be in your care for several days. May I ask your name?" Seeing Himuyang's troubled look, instead of mocking him like earlier, he said with a smile, "Kimura Kanzuya. That's my name. You can call me whatever you want." Himuyang was curious about the sudden change in the old man's attitude. Since when this old man became this kind? However, since he still felt guilty for not asking his savior's name, he didn't pry any further. "Well, I'll call you Mr. Kimura, once again, thank you. You even went through the trouble of cooking this porridge for me." "No need to thank me, just focus on getting better for now, eat well, and rest well. Let's continue where we left when you get better." "Well then, have a good rest, I'll leave you for now," the old man said as he walked out and closed the door. Turns out he's such a nice old man, although he's kind of annoying at first. The sunlight awakened Himuyang from his dream. "I've never slept this soundly ever since I came to this world. How could I sleep so soundly? I always make sure that I'm on guard, so why did I suddenly let my guard down as if there's no threat here? It's that old man, Kimura Kanzuya." Himuyang couldn't believe it at first, but he couldn't think of other reasons. The sly old man. I knew there was something weird the moment I see that fragile-looking old man living for so long in Kusajishi district. Himuyang felt more suspicious the more he thought about it. He missed these details yesterday because he was so absorbed in his thought, but he was convinced that the old man was stronger than him. That old man, Kimura Kanzuya, is hiding his true strength. With that thought in mind, Himuyang inspected the bedroom he was in carefully once again. The layout is simple and tidy. Judging from that, the owner should be a serious and disciplined person. It made no sense since the old man just seemed straight-out rude, which confused Himuyang. He was so curious about the old man, and since he felt much better and was not in as much pain as before, he decided to get up and check out what he could find outside. There was a small pond in front of the house with grass growing on both sides and a lush forest in the distance. What a beautiful place. Is there such a place in Kusajishi district? Isn't this Kusajishi district? Which part of Kusajishi district was this again? Those thoughts immediately filled Himuyang's mind. Is it okay for you to be up and about already? You're pretty tough, kid. Himuyang didn't even notice the old man's presence. He was convinced that the old man really was no ordinary guy. My body is still sore here and there, but I'm starting to get bored inside, so I decided to go out, checking out the scenery or something. Since when you've been here, Mr. Kimura? When? I've been here the whole time, didn't you see me? What? You've been here all along? Himuyang's pupils dilated. How was that possible? Even now that he saw the old man with his own eyes, he couldn't sense the old man's presence at all. What is going on here? If I didn't concentrate all my senses, I can't even sense this old man's presence. That was even scarier than instantaneous movement. Himuyang secretly thought in his mind. You're no ordinary person, are you, Mr. Kimura? Are you blind or something? I'm just a fragile old man, youngster nowadays really are. Is this Kusajishi district? Are you seriously? Kusajishi district? Of course, this is Kusajishi district. Where else do you think this is? If you really are a fragile old man like you said, then how did you survive in Kusajishi district this whole time? Heck, you seem to live so comfortably here too. Youngsters these days really are not adorable at all. I knew it. So you admit that you're not an ordinary old guy, right? Why are you so hung up on this, anyway? Since you're no ordinary old man, please be my mentor. Looking at Himuyang in front of him, Kimura Kanzuya was silent. As Himuyang grew anxious, Kimura Kanzuya finally said something. Why? Why do you want to become stronger? After hearing Kimura Kanzuya's question, Himuyang thought for a while and firmly said, survival, and freedom. I want to survive. And I have no intention to leave my life to luck, nor do I want to be pitted by others. I want to pave my own destiny with my own strength. Kimura Kanzuya was baffled by Himuyang's answer. Surviving with your own power is the easiest and, at the same time, the hardest thing to accomplish, Kimura Kanzuya murmured, looking at Himuyang with a firm look. I won't take you in as my apprentice. However, upon seeing the disappointed look on Himuyang's face, Kimura Kanzuya added, however, I don't mind offering you some advice based on my experience. Himuyang was suddenly overjoyed and immediately thanked Kimura Kanzuya. Thank you so much. And while we're at it, as you can see, I'm pretty old. It wasn't a problem to put food on the table for myself, but now that there's another mouth to feed, I'm really in a pickle here. The sly tone that Himuyang hasn't heard for a while finally returned. A drop of sweat dripped down from Himuyang's forehead as he humored the old man, just leave it to me, consider it the accommodation fee, while secretly cursing the old ma. He really is a vexing old man, and what he did before was just an act. What accommodation? Are you planning to take my room from me again? Kimura Kanzuya looked at Himuyang with a look of contempt. I don't know you're that cheeky. Then where should I live? After you leave this house, turn right. There are a bunch of trees there. It's still pretty early in the morning right now, and if everything goes well, you should be able to build a hut before dark. At least you can use it to rest, and don't forget to cook. Himuyang resisted the urge to clobber the old man in front of him. He knew that he couldn't win against him, so he just cursed him in his heart. Himuyang's house basked in the setting sun's afterglow. He called it a hut, but it looked nothing like one. How does it end up like this? It looks nothing like a hut. Himuyang muttered. It's the foundation. A faint voice startled Himuyang. Kimura Kanzuya continued, the foundation of the hut you built is weak, that's why it looks weird. Of course, it applies to everything else in this world, not just a hut. Looking at Himuyang contemplating what he just said, Kimura Kanzuya snapped him back from his thought, okay, let's have dinner first. You can stay in my house for the time being until you build your own. But I feel bad for using your bedroom again. Kimura Kanzuya squinted at Himuyang as if watching an idiot. What are you talking about? Of course you'll be sleeping outside. This damned old man. Okay, let's set the whole building a hut thing for now. You can't build it a proper one that quickly anyway. Himuyang paused for a while upon hearing Kimura Kanzuya's word, and Kimura Kanzuya immediately added, let me teach you something first. Himuyang was excited because no one has taught him anything until this point. He had to learn everything on his own through battle. As Kimura Kanzuya said last night, weak foundation. That was his biggest problem at the moment, which will halt his progress, so it couldn't be helped if Kimura Kanzuya suddenly said that he would teach him. Zanken Soki, Shinigami's 4 basic techniques. Among them, Zan refers to Zanjutsu, which is sword fighting techniques for the Zanpakuto, the most basic fighting technique. Ken refers to Hakuta, which is an unarmed fighting technique that makes use of one's own body in a fight, so refers to Hoho, which is high-speed movement. In this case, Shuanpa, since that's what Shinigami uses. Ki refers to Kido, a battle style in which Shinigami used advanced spells that require strong spiritual power. Kimura Kanzuya, who realized that Himuyang was getting bored from this explanation, added, among these 4 basic Shinigami fighting techniques, I couldn't use both Hakuta and Kido. Technically, I could use Shuinpa, but only to some extent. However, it's safe to say that no one could best me in Zanjutsu in the entire Soul Society. Himuyang was disappointed for a moment when he heard Kimura Kanzuya couldn't use both Hakuta and Kido. However, he was a little relieved upon hearing Kimura Kanzuya could at least use Shuinpa to some extent. Although the old man was annoying, he seemed to be telling the truth, and since he said that he could use Shuinpa, then his ho-ho should be pretty good. Last but not least, Himuyang was surprised when the old man said he was the best in Soul Society in terms of Zenjutsu. If this old man was really telling the truth, then his strength really is immeasurable. Kimura Kanzuya smirked upon seeing Himuyang's surprised look and then said, and what I want to teach you is mainly kendo and some ho-ho skills. What do you think a sword is? What is kendo? Sword. A sword should reflect one's gentleness, benevolence, and righteousness, so kendo is the way of gentleness, benevolence, and righteousness. Himuyang said hesitantly after recalling a book he once read. Wrong. Looking at Himuyang seriously, Kimura Kanzuya said, sword is the means to fight, and kendo is the way of killing. Swords are not toys. You must not draw your sword lightly. The moment you draw your sword, a bloodbath will surely happen. Remember, the sword itself is made to kill. Himuyang was shocked by Kimura Kanzuya's answer since he has heard various answers to that exact question from TV and books, and all of them were profound. As Himuyang contemplated Kimura Kanzuya's answer, he recalled his journey so far while stroking the zanpakuto on his sash, and as Kimura Kanzuya said earlier, whenever he drew his sword, a battle would always occur. Looking at Himuyang's eyes clearing from doubt, Kimura Kanzuya said with relief, it seems that you've already figured it out. It will always be a battle with your life on the line whenever you draw your sword, so don't draw your sword on a whim. Himuyang then grinned and said, what about the zanpakuto of the medical division? They are saving people with their swords. Kimura Kanzuya was baffled by Himuyang's comment and immediately scolded him out of embarrassment, don't interrupt me. That's an exception anyway. Can't you at least differentiate that? Kimura Kanzuya cleared his throat and said in serious tone while staring at Himuyang intently, I have 2 styles of swordsmanship, one is for a show, the other one is for practical killing. Which one do you want to learn? Didn't you say that kendo is the way of killing? Then why can you use the exhibition swordsmanship? Himuyang jokingly said, but as Kimura Kanzuya glared at him, he once again stopped joking, do you have the elegant and practical one? Seeing Kimura Kanzuya was about to snap, Himuyang instantly shut his mouth and then muttered, don't be angry, I'm just joking. Can't you at least differentiate that? So. Which one? Do you really have to ask? Of course, I want to learn the swordsmanship for practical killing. Himuyang said with determined eyes. Besides, why would I pick the exhibition swordsmanship? Am I supposed to please them with that so they can spare me? Now that you have chosen this path, don't regret it. Rest assured, I will teach you properly myself. I'll be sure to drill it into your body so that you'll never forget it. Himuyang shivered when he heard Kimura Kanzuya's words. I did say kendo, but we'll be using zanpakuto. The sword technique that you'll learn emphasizes fast, accurate, and ruthless. Since this is the swordsmanship meant for practical killing, it mainly relied on techniques such as cleaving, slashing, stabbing, thrusting, blocking, intercepting, etc., so you'll have to pay attention to small details when it comes to movement, and that's where my ho-ho comes along. Your physical prowess is a decisive factor to exhibit powerful and effective swordsmanship, and at your current state, it may be difficult. Looking at the worried expression on Himuyang's face, Kimura Kanzuya smiled insidiously, but don't worry, I'll properly teach you and strengthen your physique to the point where you can practice these. As the saying goes, no pain, no gain. You may get tired or injured during the training, but I believe you can do it. Upon seeing Kimura Kanzuya's frightening grin, Himuyang realized that there must be something fishy about this old man's training regime later, especially when he recalled this old man's personality. Himuyang realized that he was done for as he looked at Kimura Kanzuya smirking at him. 80088188996997998999100. Ha, ha. This is killing me. Himuyang collapsed to the ground with his whole body covered with sweat. Seeing Kimura Kanzuya was casually making tea, Himuyang said dissatisfiedly, "Hey, old man, it's been a year, and all you taught me was these boring exercises. What's this for?" Kimura Kanzuya took a sip of his tea and savored it. This fragrance, this taste. It's simply exquisite. Some veins on Himuyang's head popped as he ran out of patience and finally shouted, "Hey, damned old man, I'm talking to you, don't ignore me, bastard." Kimura Kanzuya glanced at Himuyang, who just collapsed to the ground and said indifferently, "Ah, are you talking to me?" Realizing that Himuyang couldn't figure it out on his own, Kimura Kanzuya put down his cup and said, "Didn't I tell you already? This training shaped up your body. With your weak body, let alone proper swordsmanship, you won't even be able to pull off a basic move." Seeing Himuyang still looked at him in disbelief, Kimura Kanzuya went on and said, "This training effectively strengthened your body as a whole. With powerful arms, you can swing your zanpakuto harder, strong legs allow you to move swifter, and your waist is the most important one. It affects your body's flexibility since that's what connect your upper and lower limbs." Suddenly, the look on Kimura Kanzuya changed from serious to perverted. "Besides, a strong waist is more important on the bed, right?" Kimura Kanzuya said as he winked meaningfully at Himuyang. "This perverted old man." Himuyang retorted right away but immediately laughed afterwards. "But you do have a point. It seems I do have to shape up this waist of mine. Well, it's decided, I will do another 1,000 sit-ups." The old man and the youngsters looked at each other and laughed pervertedly. "However, is this really okay? All I have been doing is basic training, and I haven't fought properly for a year. Don't you think I would get rusty?" As if seeing through the anxiety in Himuyang's heart, Kimura Kanzuya said with a smile, "Don't worry, I can say for sure that you didn't get rusty. In fact, you've become twice as strong than a year ago." "How can you be so sure?" Seeing Himuyang still had a hard time believing him, Kimura Kanzuya explained, "Strengthening your physique is not all there is to this exercise. Up until now, your biggest flaw was your weak foundation, and this training eliminates that weakness. Your foundation is very solid right now. Moreover, thanks to this training, your body coordination is also improving, and you should be able to control every part of your body by now." Kimura Kanzuya looked at Himuyang seriously like never before and said, "Remember. The power you cannot control it will can't be called your own. So don't be blinded by your pursuit of power. The power that you can't handle will only lead you to destruction, after all." Realizing Kimura Kanzuya was being serious for once, Himuyang no longer smiled and earnestly said, "Relax, I'll be sure to keep that in mind." Himuyang speculated that it might be like Ichigo's hollow power. He didn't really understand it himself, but he was convinced that if he was in Ichigo's shoes, he wouldn't be able to get away with it unscathed like Ichigo did since he wasn't the main protagonist, so of course he would try his best to control his power. Hearing Himuyang's serious answer, Kimura Kanzuya sighed in relief. He knew that Himuyang was brimming with potential at first glance, so he was afraid that he would be led astray. Now, he could rest easy because once Himuyang had agreed or determined to do something, he'll see it until the end. That was just how he was. Just like this boring training, despite complaining all the time, he'll see it until the end once he has made up his mind. As Kimura Kanzuya saw Himuyang collapsing due to exhaustion, Kimura Kanzuya was relieved. He felt so lucky to be able to meet this child at the end of his life. Kimura Kanzuya then picked up his teacup and savored his tea earlier while watching the sun setting on the horizon and Himuyang, who began his sit-ups. "Ha, ha. Kimura Kanzuya snapped back from his deep thoughts when he heard Himuyang panting, and upon seeing Himuyang was completely exhausted, he laughed. If you can do 1,000 additional push-ups just to be strong on the bed, you should be fine, kid. It seems that these sports can't satisfy you anymore, so I'm thinking about increasing your training regime starting tomorrow. Sports my ass. Himuyang immediately retorted when he heard Kimura Kanzuya's words, don't you see I'm out of breath? Are you planning to kill me? So you don't want to? I was thinking to teach you Zenjutsu tomorrow, but if you don't want to, then forget what I just said. What? Zenjutsu? Himuyang, who was slumping down the ground, immediately jumped excitedly, I'm just kidding, let's do it. Finally, I can say goodbye to this boring training. I'm looking forward to tomorrow. Really? I'm looking forward to it too, your expression that is. Kimura Kanzuya smiled meaningfully. The next day. Is this your so-called Zenjutsu training? Himuyang grumbled. Move your hands instead of your mouth. First of all, 1,000 vertical slashes. Concentrate. Look straight ahead. Put everything you got into each swing. Not this boring training again. Himuyang was dissatisfied, but he still swung his Zanpakuto with all he got. With each swing, Himuyang could sense a tingling sensation inside him, although faintly, and the more he swung his Zanpakuto, the stronger that sensation was, but he just couldn't wrap his head around it. Eventually, Himuyang felt as if he and his Zanpakuto were the only ones there. Kimura Kanzuya was shocked when he watched Himuyang was so immersed in each swing. How is this possible? I had a feeling that he's a genius, but to be able to stumble upon the true meaning of swordsmanship this quickly is simply unbelievable. At this rate, it won't be long before he fully grasps it. Himuyang suddenly looked confused when that mysterious sensation disappeared. He then immediately looked at Kimura Kanzuya and asked with a confused tone, old man, while I was swinging my Zanpakuto earlier, I felt this strange sensation. It's as if I'm all alone with my Zanpakuto in this world, but that sensation suddenly disappeared. What was that? Turned out it was just momentary. Was it just a fluke? Or was he really talented? Nevertheless, it was remarkable to be able to reach such a level right off the bat. Hearing Himuyang's question, Kimura Kanzuya answered after a brief pause, you have to know that unlike us souls, techniques are inanimate. I will only teach you the basics. Everyone has their own style, and teaching you my techniques will do you no good since there's no guarantee that it will suit you. You need to come up with your own moves. After all, what suits you is the best. Himuyang agreed with Kimura Kanzuya and nodded, however, that did not answer my question at all. Cough cough, Kimura Kanzuya cleared his throat in embarrassment, as for the mysterious sensation that you mentioned earlier, it is a realm that can only be grasped after one reached a certain level of kendo. Realm. What realm? Man and sword are one, man is the sword, and sword is man. Are you kidding me? Huh, not really. After you reach that realm, your Zanpakuto will be like another part of your body that you can move freely. Once you're in that state, you'll be considered a master swordsman provided you can perceive everything with your mind. So, have you entered such realm, old man? I did, although it was just a fluke. Kimura Kanzuya said humbly, but he couldn't hide the smug on his face. Is there anyone else besides you who has achieved this realm? Himuyang deliberately ignored the amazing, right, look on Kimura Kanzuya's face. Kimura Kanzuya, who obviously was not happy with Himuyang's attitude, couldn't help but glare at him and then said after a brief thought, Yamamoto Genryusai, being the strongest Shinigami in Godiai 13's Captain Commander, he obviously had achieved this realm. Not to mention his Zankinsoki has reached the highest level. Another one that I can say for sure was the head of the Kuchiki clan, one of Seoul societies for noble families. Only those two? Himuyang was puzzled. He obviously knew Captain Commander Yamamoto since he was the strongest Shinigami, but he didn't know who the current head of Kuchiki clan was. Himuyang realized that reaching Kendo's highest realm was not a simple feat, but if they were the only one who managed to do so, then this damned old man was clearly stronger than he thought. Well, actually, there's one more, and she may be even more powerful than the rest. Kimura Kanzuya said as if remembering something nostalgic, but followed by a hint of horror. Who is it? Unohana Yachiru. Kimura Kanzuya said solemnly, the most diabolical criminal to ever exist in Soul Society since 1,000 years ago, who claimed to have mastered all sort of swordsmanship, thus named herself Yachiru. Later she was recruited by Yamamoto Genryusai as Godiai 13's first Kenpachi. Although I have never challenged her myself, I watched her fight, and I speculated that she should be evenly matched with me, but I don't know whether that was her full power or not. If she is still alive now, the level of her kendo must be higher right now, and I should be no match for her. Unohana Yachiru. Is she somehow related with Unohana Retsu since they both had the surname Unohana? Himuyang wondered. He said verbally, 1,000 years ago. Even if she's alive, she would be an old hag by now. Do you not know for sure whether she's still alive or not? I don't know. Some people think she is dead, some say otherwise. After all, she is the infamous captain of the 11th Division, who bears the name Kenpachi, the strongest Shinigami. It was said that there's only one Kenpachi throughout generations, and the current 11th Division captain is the 7th Kenpachi, so it stands to reason that she should be dead, but I just had a hard time believing someone as strong as her to be killed. Besides, Siriidii has not officially announced her death, so some people think she is not dead yet and simply changed her identity. 7th Kenpachi. Who is it? Wait a minute, which timeline is this? Himuyang was completely baffled. He never asked such a question because he was afraid of hearing bad news. He was afraid that he'd have so little time left before the anime's main plot began. However, he realized that it was the exact opposite. As he wondered who the 7th Kenpachi was, he remembered that Zaraki Kenpachi was the 11th generation Kenpachi, and it would take quite a while before the main plot started. If I remember correctly, the 7th Kenpachi was called Kuryoshiki Kenpachi. Speaking of which, he is also a respected guy, not only by his division but also by other Shinigamis in Godiai 13 because he wasn't arrogant despite his strength. As for your other question, I don't know what you're talking about, but I'm pretty sure it is about time for dinner. Himuyang speculated that it would be about 200 years before the main plot kick-started, considering there would be another 3 Kenpachis before Zaraki became one, and the plot began 10 years after Zaraki became the 11th Kenpachi, so Himuyang had a lot of time to train himself. He might even become strong enough to alter the plot even though he wasn't the main protagonist in this story. Brat, what are you thinking? Did you hear what I just said? Kimura Kanzuya's dissatisfied voice snapped Himuyang back from his thought. What? Did you say something? Kimura Kanzuya then immediately smacked Himuyang on the head. That hurts, old man. Himuyang seemed grumpy as he rubbed his head. Brat, listen to me carefully. Kimura Kanzuya suddenly looked all serious, ignored Himuyang, and said, if my hunch is right, Soul Society's first Kenpachi, Unohana Yachiru, should not be dead yet. She must be alive somewhere that even Godiai 13 didn't know in the Soul Society. Kimura Kanzuya was quite satisfied when he noticed the look on Himuyang's face and immediately added, promise me that you won't lay a hand on her if you met her by chance. She's not someone you can stand against in your current state. It's true that she was later recruited by Yamamoto Genryusai as one of Godiai 13's captain, but it won't change the fact that she used to be a bloodthirsty criminal. Aha! Himuyang immediately nodded without hesitation, that goes without saying, I'm not some psycho who's so eager to die. That's good. Although you look honest, I'm not a pacifist. I'm really afraid that you will recklessly challenge her one day. No way, old man. I'm as much a pacifist as I'm honest. Is that so? Kimura Kanzuya immediately changed the topic, hurry up and cook, will you? It's about time for dinner. You're such a slave driver, old man. Himuyang grumped at Kimura Kanzuya, but he stood up and began cooking dinner nonetheless. You're getting better and better at cooking. Of course, I'm good at everything I did and cooking is no different. At this rate, I'll have a hard time letting you go. Himuyang froze. Hey, old man, you know it's hard to say no to that, don't you? Well, it can't be helped. You, youngster, have your own path to tread. There's no way you can stay with this old man forever. Himuyang wanted to say he didn't mind staying with the old man, but he couldn't say it. He knew that Kimura Kanzuya was right. He will be going to Siriidii, Godii 13, Hueco Mundo, even human world. In short, he could not stay here and keep Kimura Kanzuya company forever. There's no need to be so sad. Besides, this training is pretty hard that I won't be able to leave anytime soon, right? Seeing Himuyang didn't seem as troubled as earlier, Kimura Kanzuya said with a smile, however, there's one thing I'm concerned about. Kid, your name is Himuyang, right? We've lived together for so long, and you barely remember my name. Just how rude you can get, old man. Himuyang said dissatisfiedly. Well, I mean he is a strange surname. Since they were in Japan, the surname he was indeed a bit weird. Why don't you be my grandson and use my surname? Get lost. Damned old man, like hell I will. Ha 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 ha, come on, brat. Do you really have to be that against it? That kind of hurts my feelings, you know. Go to hell. Early in the morning, as the sun shone through the window, followed by several insects that rose early, hopping through the grass and birds chirping on the tree. Shwa shwa shwa, the sound of a sword being swung around interspersed between the birds chirping. It was Himuyang who intensely swung his zanpakuto under the tree. As Himuyang swung his zanpakuto again and again, a faint breeze swirled around him, but Himuyang was too immersed in his training that he didn't notice anything around him, including the breeze. Before he realized it, Kimura Kanzuya was already behind Himuyang. He nodded in satisfaction upon seeing Himuyang swinging the zanpakuto in his hands again and again. Upon perceiving the breeze surrounding Himuyang, Kimura Kanzuya frowned. Is this his zanpakuto's power? It seems to be a wind type. His Ryatsu was already on par or even better than those of a lieutenant with just a few years of training. He's also getting better at Shunpa even though his Shunpa was no match to those of Onmitsukido at his current state. Although I can't teach him anything about Hakuda, his reflex and physical finesse isn't bad. It'll be up to him to learn Kido since I can't teach it to him either. He may pick it up if he goes to Shino Academy. However, Kendo is a whole different matter. Kimura Kanzuya's eyes were filled with pride as he looked at Himuyang, who was swinging his sword. His Kendo wouldn't fall short to those of a captain. Heck, he may even come out on top. Oh, how long have you been here, old man? Himuyang said without looking back while sheathing his zanpakuto. Oh ho, so you can at least perceive my presence now. It's no big deal for a genius like me. Himuyang boasted shamelessly. Have you sensed your zanpakuto's presence? Kimura Kanzuya casually ignored Himuyang's boasting and asked him such a question. The prideful look on Himuyang's face instantly changed into despair when he heard Kimura Kanzuya's question. Sigh, no luck on that, why do you have to ask such a depressing question? Kimura Kanzuya seemed a little puzzled. That's not supposed to happen if you really did enter your inner world around 10 years ago and conversed with your zanpakuto. Although you couldn't find out its name back then, it stands to reason that you should have qualified to activate Shirkai. Moreover, you are more than 10 times stronger than when you first came here 10 years ago. Although you are still nowhere near a captain's level now, you should be able to hold your own against a lieutenant, except for that fool who always follows Yamamoto Genryusai around. Huh? Am I that strong? Himuyang was so excited to hear that he would be able to beat Lieutenant. Wait, the fool who always follows Captain Commander Yamamoto? Ah. Is it Chojiro Sasakaibe? He doesn't seem that formidable in the manga. Himuyang muttered. He certainly is one hopeless fool, but I have to say that he is an amazing guy. Kimura Kanzuya said with a hint of nostalgic look on his face. Hey, old man, don't leave me hanging and reminiscing the past on your own. It was more than 1,000 years ago. Again. Just how long has this old man lived? Himuyang was exasperated. Back then, he was just a high-spirited and vigorous youngster at the time, and Yamamoto was already a well-known figure in the Soul Society. At the time, Yamamoto was still called Yamamoto Shigekuni. He was the Genryu founder and Genji School's head instructor. Because of the scar on Yamamoto's forehead, that youngster referred to him as Ijisaidano, which was known throughout the Soul Society. He admired Yamamoto Shigekuni like crazy, and he was determined to become Yamamoto's right hand. Although he was not Genji School's student, he almost went there every day to see Yamamoto even after Yamamoto scolded him, which drove others crazy. Despite reprimanding him so often, everyone knew that he really appreciated that tenacious fool. However, Yamamoto once reprimanded him, and he didn't go to Genji School for a month since then. Everyone thought he gave up, but to everyone's surprise, he came again after a whole month of training and Bankai. In just 1 month, he has entered the domain that most Shinigami couldn't touch in their whole life. Ever since then, he had served as Yamamoto's right hand, fought for him, and shared his concern with him, making a name for himself throughout Soul Society in the process. The name of that youngster is Chojiro Sasuke. He is currently Gotei 13 1st Division's lieutenant. He has held this position since Gotei 13 was formed. Although he is only lieutenant, as a person who has learned Bankai more than 1,000 years ago, he is definitely more powerful than some of Gotei 13 captain. Kimura Kanzuya glanced at Himuyang before continuing, although he has not used his Bankai since 1,000 years ago, you'd undoubtedly lose against him in your current state. Himuyang laughed dryly while recalling the plot in anime. As far as he knew from the anime, that old man was nothing special, yet why did Kimura Kanzuya value him that highly? He was determined to challenge that old man once he met him because he was convinced that old man was no big deal. Realizing Himuyang was eager to challenge Chojiro Sasuke, Kimura Kanzuya sighed and immediately reprimanded him. Brat, let me warn you, don't lay a hand on him. You don't know the extent of that man's power. Hey old man, that again. Ah. Is it because you're acquainted with him? Is he your old friend or something? Judging from that nostalgic look on your face earlier, that's gotta be it, right? Himuyang said perfunctorily. Kimura Kanzuya suddenly fell silent. How about it? Did I hit the mark? Shut up. Kimura Kanzuya yelled but immediately smiled and said, come to think of it, you've always wanted real combat training, right? Come, I'll be your opponent. Take your stance. What's with you all of a sudden? The sudden change in Kimura Kanzuya's attitude surprised Himuyang, but it was too late at this point. Come on, what are you waiting for? Give me your best shot. You're not gonna draw your sword? Himuyang was puzzled when he saw Kimura Kanzuya just stood in front of him without drawing his sword. I'll draw my sword if I really have to. You've done it now, old man. The next second, Himuyang suddenly disappeared from plain sight and appeared right in front of Kimura Kanzuya in the next second and thrust his Zanpakuto to Kimura Kanzuya's waist. Where are you looking? A playful laugh came from behind. There. Himuyang immediately tried to strike where the voice came from with his elbow and hit nothing but thin air. You'll never be able to hit me with that speed. Kimura Kanzuya was already about 10 meters away in front of Himuyang with hands behind his back and said, let me show you how it's done. Kimura Kanzuya disappeared from Himuyang's sight right after and emerged beside Himuyang in the next second, kicking him on the chest. Himuyang was sent flying, and Kimura Kanzuya kicked him once again mid-air before he landed. Himuyang struggled to stand back on his feet only to see Kimura Kanzuya, who stood in front of him with his hands still behind his back. Realizing the gap of strength between them, Muyang stroked his chest and said, "Can't you at least hold back, old man? That's really immature, you know." "I am holding back. Otherwise, you would have died by now." Now, old man, I'm not even serious yet, so don't think you've won just yet." "Really?" Suddenly overwhelming Ryatsu burst out of Kimura Kanzuya's seemingly fragile body. Muyang almost fell due to the sheer pressure of the Ryatsu. "No way. This Ryatsu is on a whole different level." Kanzuya's sudden burst of Ryatsu overwhelmed Muyang. He could barely breathe while sweating profusely. Muyang tried hard to endure the pressure of Kanzuya's Ryatsu. He knew the old man in front of him was no ordinary old man, but he just had a hard time believing such a nasty and rude old man had a power beyond his understanding. Muyang began to think that he really shouldn't judge a book by its cover. Muyang couldn't even muster the will to fight due to the sheer pressure of Kanzuya's Ryatsu. "Where did that confidence you show earlier go, brat? You're coming or not?" "Shut up, old man." Muyang realized that he might be crushed to death by Kanzuya's Ryatsu alone if he carelessly rushed toward him right now. "If you're not coming, then I will." Then, Kanzuya walked towards Muyang, and the pressure of his Ryatsu intensified twofold with each step he took. Muyang could barely stand while sweat dripping from Muyang's cheeks when Kanzuya was only 1 meter away from him. An ordinary guy would have fainted from the Ryatsu alone. Zankinsoki is indeed Shinigamis for basic fighting techniques, but there is one more thing that is even more essential in combat, that is Ryatsu. Be it Shinigami, Hollow, Quincy, or something else, Ryatsu is always the most basic thing. As you see now, no matter how good your Zanjutsu is, you're completely powerless against my Ryatsu. Unlike Zankinsoki, Ryatsu can hardly be enhanced through training. Noble was born with immense Ryatsu inherited from their ancestor, but that was not the case with average people. Physical training can slightly enhance your Ryoryoku's growth. That's why I always nag you to do your physical training since it would increase your Ryatsu. So, get over yourself, brat. You're at a disadvantage compared to those noble. If you want to become stronger, you need much more effort. In the eyes of a truly skilled Shinigami, you're nothing but an infant who can finally walk. Kanzuya's words kept echoing in Muyang's mind, stimulating the proud otaku's self-esteem. Ah! What is this place? Why does it feel so familiar? Bright sunshine, green grass, lush forest, and a faint floral fragrance in the air. You're finally here. I have to say, though, you really are an incompetent master. A voice mocking Muyang behind him suddenly said. Fuck. Why does everyone keep sneaking behind me? Can't they talk to me like a normal person? Muyang grumped helplessly. He lightly chuckled. The figure behind Muyang casually ignored him and observed him from the top of his head to the bottom of his toe for a while, then said mockingly, upon a closer look, I realize you really are such a useless master. This is all you have to offer. 10 years of training. How disappointing. Seeing the guy in front of him casually ridiculed his efforts after more than 10 years, the veins on Muyang's head popped. Seeing Muyang seemed annoyed, the blue-haired man said casually, Now, don't think too much of it, I'm simply looking down on you, that's all. I'm so going to kill you. Muyang, whose pride was completely shattered, snarled. Wait a minute, I suddenly forgot my name. Upon hearing those words, Muyang, who has run out of patience, suddenly turned 180 degrees. No, please recall your name. The blue-haired man chuckled, You're funny. The blue-haired man fanned himself with the folded fan in his hand. After thoroughly observing Muyang for a while, he shook his head and sighed helplessly. What's wrong? Muyang asked anxiously when he saw this reaction. You're still not strong enough. What? You've gotta be kidding me. Muyang was baffled by his Zanpakuto's answer. According to Kanzuya, he should be stronger than most lieutenant by now, and even that wasn't enough for him to learn Shirkai. The blue-haired man seemed to be deep in thought as the look on his face was constantly changing. After quite a while, he lifted his head and looked at Muyang. It can't be helped, I'll help you for now. Did you say something? I didn't catch what you just said. It's nothing. He looked at Muyang once again, which threw Muyang off. He had an identity crisis for a moment because he was bewitched by his own Zanpakuto's handsomeness. He then realized that Zanpakuto was a manifestation of its master's deepest desire, making him think that he might be gay. Because of that, he had this weird look on his face. Like I said. What? Just call me Cheyenne. Cheyenne translated as purple cloud. Is that your name? Muyang secretly ridiculed his Zanpakuto's name because it sounded girly. Yeah, let's just say that's my name. What do you mean, let's just say that's your name? Is that your real name or not? Muyang began to doubt his Zanpakuto. Stop asking every little thing and just call it that. Cheyenne, tentatively, said dissatisfiedly. Tell me, Muyang thoroughly observed his Zanpakuto from the top of his head to the bottom of his toe and said, there's nothing purple about you, so why Cheyenne? Are you lying to me? Why not? I have purple underwear. Purple underwear. Hearing this answer, Muyang felt like being struck by thunder in the middle of the day. You really are an asshole. After that, Muyang looked at his Zanpakuto with disgust. Are you gonna waste your time joking around? Last I check, you don't seem to be doing so well in the real world. Muyang finally realized that he was fighting the old man, so he immediately asked, how can I get back? That's a question you should ask yourself. This is your inner world, after all. After hearing Cheyenne's answer, Muyang's consciousness gradually disappeared from his inner world. Of course, he made sure to glare at Cheyenne before he left. Sigh, he's still too weak. It'll be a while before I can wield my true power at this rate. A faint voice said in Muyang's inner world. The moment Muyang opened his eyes, Kanzuya was already only one step away from him, and his body felt like being torn to pieces by Kimura Kazuei's intense Ryatsu. Don't you think you're too close, old man? Kanzuya was surprised after he noticed Muyang, who was like in a trance just now, was like a completely different person to a moment ago. Old man, I'm not an infant who has just learned how to walk. Muyang placed his Zanpakuto right in front of his chest. Don't tell me. Kanzuya seemed to have noticed what happened to Muyang. Play your melody, Cheyenne. Play your melody, Cheyenne. The Zanpakuto in Muyang's hand instantly let out a screeching sound and radiated dazzling light, followed by a burst of Ryatsu that repelled Kanzuya's Ryatsu that overwhelmed Muyang. Kanzuya had to close his eyes due to the blinding light. As he sensed the powerful Ryatsu coming from Muyang, Kanzuya slightly smiled. At least in terms of Ryatsu alone, he has reached a captain's level. He really is something else. Us elderly really can't help but admire a youngster's vigor and growth. The blinding light and the screeching sound gradually subsided, and that was when Kanzuya could finally have a clear look at Muyang. The first thing Kanzuya noticed was the Zanpakuto in Muyang's hand had changed shape into a kung fu sword with purple handguards. It seemed nothing special at first glance aside from the blood that was embellished on its blade, which gave it a completely menacing vibe. ZZTTTZZZTT. Countless dark purple lightning arc also circulated around the Zanpakuto. Kanzuya gasped for a second because of how intimidating the Zanpakuto looked. He even began to doubt whether Muyang could handle it or not. Is this my Shirkai? Muyang couldn't contain his excitement when he felt the surging Ryatsu in his body and looked at his Zanpakuto that has already changed shape. Huh, you won't be able to keep me down with your Ryatsu like what you did earlier, old man. Muyang said challengingly to Kimura Kanzuya while brandishing the Zanpakuto in his hand. Not bad, brat. Your Ryatsu seems pretty good too. To think that you could use your Shirkai this early, I really can't let my guard down around you. He. Muyang's Zanpakuto let out a screeching sound once again as he kept brandishing it before saying to Kanzuya, "Here I come, old man, be sure to take a good look at my counterattack." Muyang instantly disappeared right after saying those words. He's fast. Several times faster than earlier. Kanzuya gasped after noticing how fast Muyang has become. Nonetheless, he easily dodged Muyang's strike and even pushed down Muyang's hand that his Zanpakuto was driven down to the ground. "Is this all you got? Did you really call this a counterattack?" Kanzuya teased Muyang. "Of course not," Muyang said as he pulled out his Zanpakuto from the ground. "I just can't fully adapt to this sudden power surge within me yet." "Ah, I see. Do you want me to give you some time then?" "No, fighting is the best way," Muyang said as he simply rushed towards Kanzuya without using Shuunpa. Muyang relentlessly waved his Zanpakuto, but Kanzuya dodged every single one of his attacks effortlessly. "What's wrong? Have you given up now that you realized you couldn't defeat me?" "Well, that's a correct decision." Kanzuya couldn't help but say this once Muyang stopped attacking. Muyang shook his head and said with a smile, "You jest, surely. I haven't even forced you to draw your sword yet. I almost adapted to my Shirkai now. Sit tight, and I'll show you something interesting." "Oh ho. I'm looking forward to it. I wonder if you really can force me to draw my sword." "You can look forward to it." In the next second, Muyang was already right in front of Kanzuya and slashed him down. "Haven't you learned your lesson? You won't be able to hit me with that speed." Kanzuya chuckled as he slightly backed off to evade the strike, but the blade sped up in an instant, forcing him to back off further than he planned, and he could feel the gushing wind from the blade as it almost grazed his forehead. Kanzuya looked at the edge of Muyang's blade with a lingering fear as a strand of his hair fell where he previously stood. "Whoa, that was close. Are you trying to kill me, brat? Didn't your mother teach to respect the elders?" Kanzuya immediately cursed Muyang. "What are you talking about, old man? How could a polite and well-behaved man like me disrespect the elderly?" Muyang looked at the strand of hair that he cut earlier smugly. "You haven't even drawn your sword. I'm sure you're still holding back." Muyang was so proud deep down upon seeing Kanzuya's priceless expression when he noticed Muyang managed to cut a strand of his hair. "Here I come, old man. Don't blame me for not warning you later." Muyang kept attacking Kanzuya, and the speed of his blade skyrocketed at certain times for only a moment as the battle went on, making Kanzuya wondered whether his Zanpakuto was a speed type. However, at that moment, not only its speed but its power was also drastically enhanced, which made Kanzuya confused. As the battle dragged out, Kanzuya began to doubt himself even more. The momentary speed and power enhancement on Muyang's Zanpakuto really did a number on him since it became hard for him to predict Muyang's movement. Kanzuya was really annoyed because of how troublesome this ability was. Here. Noticing a split moment of distraction, Muyang immediately boosted his speed to the limit and thrust his Zanpakuto into Kanzuya's chest. Not good. Kanzuya was surprised when he came back to his senses and realized that he wouldn't be able to dodge in time, so he immediately drew his Zanpakuto without hesitation to block Muyang's attack. "Huh, you finally draw your sword, old man," Muyang said smugly, but the next moment the look on his face became villainous. "Hee old man, are you ready to suffer?" Muyang had no plan to give Kanzuya a room to breathe. Dang 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 dang. The sound of sword collision filled the air, and it went on for quite a while, until... This is... Each time Kanzuya's Zanpakuto hit Muyang's Zanpakuto, he could feel the faintly numbing sensation on his hand. How can it be? This brat's attack is not supposed to be that heavy. Upon closer look, Kanzuya finally noticed countless nearly transparent dark purple lightning arcs circulating on his Zanpakuto, and that was when he realized that the Zanpakuto's power was lightning. "Oh, so you've noticed?" Muyang stopped attacking, raised the Zanpakuto in his hand, and said to Kanzuya, "This guy is called Cheyenne, and it's a lightning element Zanpakuto. However, it's a support type Zanpakuto, not the offensive type. It can stimulate by utilizing lightning, enhancing its own strength and speed. Moreover, depending on the lightning's intensity in which part was stimulated, different effects can be generated. So, theoretically, the enhancement type was infinite. After listening to Muyang's explanation, Kanzuya nodded and sighed. It really is an excellent ability, but this enhancement placed quite a load on your own body. Kanzuya's words are crucial. You have sharp eyes, old man. Muyang praised Kanzuya for his insight. In addition, the lightning attribute Ryatsu around the blade will gradually numb the opponent's body in the fight. Although it's faint, and the numbing effect only lasted for a moment, that exact moment can determine life and death in a high-level fight. Kanzuya nodded. Well, that's true. I admit that your Zanpakuto is really amazing. Of course, it's mine after all. Since your Shirkai's ability put a heavy load on your body, you must train harder in the future to improve your physical ability. I do think it's time for you to do some weight training. No. Ding dong ding dong. The sound of two swords clashing reverberated in the air even though both of the swords were too fast to the naked eye. Well, it seems like all that time you spent training like a hopeless idiot wasn't in vain after all. Kanzuya, who seemed out of breath, said. Of course. I've been training so hard that it shouldn't come off as a surprise, haha. Muyang panted while wiping the sweat from his forehead. Kanzuya just smiled slightly without retorting like usual. It seemed that he was quite impressed by how well Muyang did this time. Muyang stuck his Zanpakuto to the ground and said as he massaged his own body, it seems maintaining the enhancement for a long time really takes a toll on my body, old man. Even just twofold enhancement is a bit overwhelming and my whole body is sore now. You're pretty tough, brat. You'll be fine after a night of rest. Kanzuya said lightly. Are you even human, old man? Kanzuya just squinted his eyes. He didn't bother retorting since he was used to Muyang's insult at this point. Now that you've caught your breath, go and cook for dinner. You are so inhumane. Muyang pointed to Kanzuya and complained. Yeah, I have stopped being a human long ago, so are you and everyone in Soul Society. Muyang couldn't refute Kanzuya's argument since he was technically right. The ability to enhance your own body, it really is a splendid ability. Lightning attribute is an extremely strong element. Too bad your Zanpakuto's ability can only target itself. Lightning attribute's attack power is unique, after all. A bit unfortunate. The powerful lightning element Zanpakuto. Kanzuya said as his voice grew inaudible, and he seemed to be lost in thought. Hearing Kanzuya's words, Muyang partway thought Kanzuya had some suggestion for a finishing move of some sort, but it turned out he was just lost in thought. After a while, Kanzuya came back to his senses and stared at Muyang, who was still sitting there, looking puzzled. Why are you still here? Didn't I tell you to cook? Fuck. Old man, you're like about to say something important and then left me hanging halfway through. Did I? Ha 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 ha, don't mind me, just cook. This damn old man. Muyang got up grumpily and walked towards the kitchen. Brat, I've been thinking, and I believe that's not all there is to your Zanpakuto's ability. I suspect it has other abilities, but it's all up to you to figure it out and make it your own. Other abilities? Muyang seemed confused because that thought never crossed his mind. Your Zanpakuto's lightning can only be used to enhance itself by enveloping it in lightning. It's quite formidable, but it lacks destructive power. If only the lightning can be unleashed to strike the opponent, it would definitely make a difference. I'll do what I can, but I can't make any promises. Muyang said after pondering for a moment. Hey, brat. Kanzuya called Muyang to draw his attention. However, before he could even say a word. No. I don't want to be your grandson. You really are persistent, old man. How many times have we had this conversation? Ever since Kanzuya joked about adopting Muyang as his grandson, he has been mentioning it, again and again, which made it sound no longer like a joke, making Muyang uncomfortable that he always argued vehemently. However, he eventually got used to it to the point that he didn't even bother retorting anymore. Perhaps deep down, Muyang has already considered the old man as his family. Upon hearing Muyang's blunt refusal, Kazuya was instantly dejected. "I haven't even said anything yet. You really don't know how to respect the elderly, you know." Muyang ignored Kazuya's whining. This was not the first time he heard this kind of tantrum from Kazuya, so he wouldn't be bothered after all this time. The next day, after having breakfast, Muyang began his daily training as usual. As he did his training regime, Muyang felt something was off with Kazuya that day. Normally, Kazuya would be laughing at him while he was training, yet it was so quiet today. Muyang, who believed that something must have happened, secretly glanced at Kazuya only to find him sitting quietly below a tree with erratic eyes. That old man wasn't in love or anything, right? No, that can't be. He's just a perverted old man. What's with you, old man? Muyang could no longer bear seeing Kazuya's unusual behavior. Ah! Kazuya was like being snapped back after a long daydream and looked at Muyang blankly. "Is your daily training over already? How time flies." Maybe it's because you just sat there daydreaming. It's not for me, though. As you can see, I'm exhausted. Ha ha ha, it's the training for you, after all, right? Kazuya laughed. How time flies. Kazuya sighed. Seeing the change in Kazuya's expression, Muyang stopped joking since he knew what was happening here. You have been learning Shirkai under my guidance for several years now, more than 20 years I believe. Hey, old man, what's with you all of a sudden? Muyang already knew what was going on. Although he already knew that this day would come sooner or later, especially after he has awakened his Shirkai. Now that the day actually came, he still had a hard time making up his mind. Although Muyang has always looked forward to going to Siriidii in order to see Godii 13 and other characters in the anime, he still felt reluctant now when it came. After all, he has spent quite some time with Kazuya during his time in this world. Despite the old man's terrible personality, he could feel his kindness. Aren't you a self-proclaimed genius? You can at least figure that out yourself, right? Kazuya laughed as he saw the complicated look on Muyang's face. You've always wanted to see Godii 13, right? Why do you even hesitate because of this old man? Seeing that Muyang was still in low spirits, Kazuya said, I have nothing left to teach you, so it's time to let you go. Unlike me, you are still young. The young are supposed to go out there and have fun. Don't waste your youth, and more importantly, don't waste your talent. Show it to the whole world. Go. Go to Siriidii, see the Godii 13 and this world with your own eyes. Muyang was confused by Kazuya's few words. The emotions that he had contained in these years burst out at once. He wished to go to Siriidii as soon as he could. Well, old man, I'll be leaving then. Muyang said as he turned around and took a step forward. You heartless brat. Hold your horses. At least make me lunch first before leaving. Muyang turned and looked at Kazuya, who was standing at the door, and waved his hand. Old man, I'll be leaving this time for sure, take care of yourself, be sure to eat regularly. Muyang then turned around and left without looking back, showing only his broad back. You've really grown up into a fine young man. Kazuya was relieved upon seeing Muyang's back that gradually disappeared from sight. Is it just me, or does this place seem awfully familiar? Muyang muttered when he saw the giant trees in front of him. I feel like I've seen these trees before. Muyang thoroughly observed the trees and his surrounding for a while and scratched his head in distress. Fuck. What the hell is this place? Kusajishi district's geographical layout was indeed quite complicated because there was barely any building around, just some tall trees with no distinct difference and nature trails formed due to people passing through, and even that was jumbled up. Muyang has never been to this place before, so he just kept walking based on instinct for quite a while and finally realized he was lost. Fuck. Shit. Muyang was puzzled when he saw the intersecting path in front of him, pondering which path led to Siriidii. Muyang sighed when he saw the sun was about to go down while he was still stuck in Kusajishi district. Luckily, Kanzuya was not there. Otherwise, he would have been rained down with mockery. Whatever will be, will be. After pondering for a while, Muyang chose the widest path and continued his journey. There's not even a signpost, let alone a map. As if that alone is not bad enough, there is no one to be found. How can I ask for direction? Is everyone in Kusajishi district dead or what? Dang dang dang, the sound of swords clashing followed by a scream broke the dead silence. Muyang, who was dejected, snapped back to his senses because he finally heard a human's voice, even though it was a scream. Muyang rushed to the place where he heard the voice with consecutive shunpa. Upon arriving at the vicinity, he couldn't help but gasp even though he has seen quite a fair share of stuff during his time in Kusajishi district. It was simply hell on earth, even though there was indeed hell in Soul Society. There were corpses as far as he could see. There must be at least 100 corpses there, and almost none of them was intact with the smell of blood that wouldn't disappear. Although Muyang has killed many people, this was the first time he saw this many dead bodies piling up in front of him, and almost all of them were dismembered. Kill him. We have the numbers, and he's alone. The voice of someone shouting drew Muyang's attention. In the distance, he saw another 100 people charging toward a person out of desperation. Fuck. Ganging up on one guy, aren't they ashamed of themselves? Seeing this scene, Muyang recalled that he was also ganged up when he first arrived in Kusajishi district, so he wanted to help the guy being ganged up on. Suddenly, Muyang was stopped in his tracks upon seeing the next scene that unfolded before his eyes. It was a massacre. The lone man decimated the 100 people charging straight at him. A nearly 2 meters tall man obviously stood out among other men there despite being surrounded by so many men. Another noticeable trait in his appearance was a long, thin scar running down the left side of his face and across his left eye. He had a wild and aggressive appearance, especially when he smiled menacingly while waving a thin, chipped and seemingly worn-down zanpakuto in his hand, cutting down everyone in his path. There's no doubt about it, it must be him, Zaraki Kenpachi. Although he looked relatively young, around his 20s, Muyang couldn't mistake the beast-like Zaraki Kenpachi at first glance. Seeing Zaraki massacring everyone he saw, Muyang had mixed-up feelings. He was the first character from the anime that he encountered, so he was obviously excited. However, upon recalling his uncontainable desire to fight in the anime, he didn't know whether he should be excited or not, especially after realizing Zaraki had noticed him from afar. He is a demon, a devil. He's not an opponent we can defeat even with our numbers. Run away. Run. Everyone immediately ran for their lives. Even those whose limbs have been decapitated tried their best to escape while Zaraki, who was unscathed, still held his zanpakuto firmly, leaving only Zaraki and Muyang there. You seem pretty strong. You should be able to withstand my strike, come and fight me. Zaraki said to Muyang while brandishing zanpakuto. Huh. Muyang was speechless because he was still thinking about how to say hello to Zaraki. He immediately raised his hand and refused, I'm just passing by. Please don't mind me. Passing by. What's with that excuse? Fight comes first, talk later. Zaraki has already rushed to Muyang as he raised his zanpakuto menacingly, ready to strike Muyang down. Fuck. Seeing Zaraki has already rushed toward him, Muyang panicked for a second but immediately used Shunpa to dodge Zaraki's first attack. After successfully dodging Zaraki's strike, Muyang looked back and gasped when he saw a huge ravine that was caused by Zaraki's attack. That's his normal strike. As expected of Zaraki Kenpachi. Muyang muttered. I said, we don't have to fight. Muyang said to Zaraki, trying to quell his thirst to fight, but that seemed to fall into deaf ears. Ha 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 ha! Zaraki laughed heartily and turned around with eyes full of excitement as the grin on his face became wider and wider. I know you're on a different league than those scumbags earlier. Come on, let me enjoy a good fight for once. Shit, it's no use. Seeing the grin on Zaraki's face, Muyang knew there was no use to run or convince him. Is this for real? Muyang held his scabbard with his left hand and gripped the hilt with his right hand while planting his feet deep on the ground and solidified his stance. It looks like there's no other choice but to fight you. He did say that, but he didn't know whether he could beat Zaraki in a fight. Either way, he had to give it a try, and since Zaraki was still in his 20s, he shouldn't be as strong as he was when he was the 11th Division's captain later. Moreover, Kanzuya did say that he should be able to hold his own against a captain, so he should be fine. With that thought in mind, Muyang finally could calm himself down a bit. He adjusted his breathing and concentrated all his energy on the enemy in front of him, Zaraki. Seeing Muyang seemed ready to fight, Zaraki cracked his neck and swung his hand that didn't hold the Zanpakuto. His eyes were solemn, but his grin was so sinister. Interesting, finally a cutting. Seeing Zaraki getting closer and closer, Muyang firmly gripped the hilt, not letting his guard down for even a second. Shwa! Zaraki struck down heavily, aiming for Muyang's forehead. Dang! Muyang blocked it with his Zanpakuto, and their Ryatsu clash resulted in a hurricane blowing throughout the battlefield. Ha 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 ha! Now this will be a good fight. It's been so long since I can enjoy the thrill of a fight. Come. Let's enjoy this fight some more. Zaraki shouted like a madman after Muyang inflicted a bunch of wound on his body, but all of them was minor that he barely bled. Although technically, he wasn't human, he was more like a beast in this case. Muyang was panting as blood dripped down from the wound on his shoulder, dyeing his clothes red. The guy in front of Muyang was indeed beyond his comprehension. Instead of losing his will to fight, Zaraki became even more vigorous after Muyang inflicted minor wounds on him earlier. Ha ha ha! After laughing, Zaraki lowered his head and found wounds that Muyang inflicted, which seemingly excite him even more because he smiled at Muyang right after. Amazing, it's been a while since someone can cut me, you really are something else. But it's not enough. Nowhere near enough. Zaraki laughed eerily as he stuck his tongue out and licked the blood on the word. I haven't had enough fun just yet. Let me enjoy this some more. Zaraki shouted as he rushed towards Muyang and struck relentlessly. Even after fighting for quite a while, his movement didn't become any slower. In fact, it became even faster, and each of his strikes became heavier. This guy really defied logic itself. Muyang was forced on the defensive. Muyang, who was only 1.78 meters tall, had his hands full blocking Zaraki's attack since he was 2 meters tall. Moreover, Zaraki's strike was so heavy that Muyang's hands were numb each time he blocked it. Is this guy a scion or what? Such a ridiculous thought crossed Muyang's mind because he got stronger after finding out he had a worthwhile opponent. Although Zaraki's attack seemed sloppy and out of rhythm at first glance, it was fast, heavy, and he seemed to know where to attack, giving Muyang a run for his own money. Aren't you going to fight back? Why did you keep defending? Zaraki said as he stopped attacking and looked down at Muyang. It might sound condescending and arrogant, but he had no ill intent and simply wanted an evenly matched fight. Hearing the condescending question from Zaraki, Muyang was annoyed. He instantly disappeared and reappeared again behind Zaraki. SSSKK. Blood spurted from Zaraki's shoulder. Zaraki licked his lips as he watched the blood spurting from his shoulder. Despite the pain that he was supposed to feel, he grinned at Muyang. That's more like it. This is the battle I wished for. Zaraki suddenly disappeared, tearing half of his sleeves, and broke free from Muyang's Zanpakuto only to reappear a moment later to strike Muyang down. Muyang, who managed to block it, smiled. He was raring for a good fight too deep down, just like Zaraki. After blocking Zaraki's counterattack, it was Muyang's turn to be on offense. He was confident that he wouldn't lose to Zaraki when it came to reaction speed. The sound of swords colliding echoed throughout the open space. No one knew how many times those two have exchanged blows, but the clash of their Ryatsu surely left a devastating impact. Amazing! This really is an awesome fight. Before Muyang realized it, he was completely absorbed in the thrill of the fight. So far, he has only fought Kimura Kanzuya, who kept holding back in their fight, not to mention he kept taunting him during their fight, which was annoying. He has never experienced an evenly matched fight until now. This was the first time he felt the thrill of fighting with his life on the line, which he wouldn't be able to experience when he played online games in his previous life, and he was completely absorbed in it right now. So this is how it feels. Muyang sidestepped Zaraki's thrust. He trembled with excitement when the edge of Zaraki's Zanpakuto almost grazed the tip of his nose as he thrust his Zanpakuto into Zaraki's chest, which left a gaping wound. PRSS, the blood spurted into Muyang's face that was smiling terrifyingly. Is that all you got? Come on, don't let me down. I'm nowhere near done just yet. The pain that he felt due to the wound on his chest made Zaraki even more excited. This is what I've been looking for. The thrill of a fight with my life on the line. Zaraki roared excitedly as his eyes were filled with madness. It has been a while since Zaraki faced an opponent that could make him this excited. Almost all of his opponents so far were too weak for him to enjoy the thrill of a fight. So he couldn't contain his excitement upon encountering someone as strong, no, stronger than him. Zaraki was completely lost in the pleasure of fighting. He swung the Zanpakuto in his hand relentlessly without a care for the blood that kept spurting from the wounds on his body. Ah, feeling. The last time I feel this excited was with you, Zaraki muttered as he unconsciously recalled his fight with Unohana Yachiru a long time ago and went into a trance state. There. Muyang dodged all of Zaraki's relentless strikes and immediately thrust it into Zaraki's throat upon realizing that he was in a trance. Dang! Zaraki's Zanpakuto blocked Muyang's strike from an impossible angle. What? Muyang shouted incredulously. At that moment, the speed of Zaraki's Zanpakuto suddenly increased, blocking Muyang's attack that wasn't supposed to be possible to block from that angle. Even though Muyang also briefly cut the momentum of his strike before impact, so he didn't leave himself open, Zaraki's reaction speed just now was simply unbelievable. Zaraki himself couldn't believe the fact that he actually lost his consciousness just now. It has only happened once during his fight with Unohana Yachiru. He couldn't believe that he could feel that sensation again. Shwa. Suddenly, a wound appeared on Muyang's chest, and blood slowly dripped from the wound. How can it be? Is this for real? It is as if he is a completely different person. Be it reaction speed, strength, and even Ryatsu, all of them are on a completely different level. What is going on? Muyang couldn't believe his eyes. He thought he has already blocked Zaraki's attack, but it turned out he was still injured. Moreover, that attack just now was on a whole different level so far. It was just a random slash, yet it inflicted the biggest wound since the fight began. Hadn't he knew that Zaraki couldn't use Shirkai, he would have thought that Zaraki used his Shirkai just now. Although I don't know why I suddenly became stronger, this should make it even more interesting. A powerful Ryatsu burst out of Zaraki as he raised his Zanpakuto. Upon sensing the powerful Ryatsu, Muyang knew he couldn't afford to hold back anymore and raised his Zanpakuto as well. Play your melody, Cheyenne. Play your melody, Cheyenne. Muyang shouted while pointing Cheyenne toward Zaraki. Upon chanting the release incantation, Muyang's Zanpakuto immediately changed shape into a completely different type of sword with purple lightning circulating around its blade and a sliver of blood adding its menacing aura. After feeling the surge of Ryatsu and power surging inside his body, Muyang's confidence skyrocketed. With his Ryatsu surpassing that of Zaraki's and his Zanpakuto's abilities, he believed dealing with Zaraki wouldn't be so hard now. Zaraki was clearly excited since he couldn't help but grin. That's Shikai, are you a Shinigami? Not that it matters as long as I can enjoy this fight. Hearing Zaraki's words, Muyang slightly smiled and brandished the Zanpakuto in his hand as he said indifferently, be careful now, I won't show mercy like earlier. Try me. Muyang started off by using the lightning on his legs, enhancing his speed significantly. He disappeared from sight and reappeared in front of Zaraki, thrusting his Zanpakuto into Zaraki's waist. Dang! Zaraki blocked Muyang's first attack in the nick of time. However, Muyang backed off so fast that Zaraki didn't have the time to counterattack. Oh ho, so you can keep up with my speed. Not bad. Muyang slightly smiled. He would commend his opponent if they did deserve it. Huh, it's nothing really. You're pretty fast, the last one was pretty close. Oh, really? Knowing he was being taunted, Muyang smiled and said, what about this one then? Muyang suddenly moved so fast that a dozen or so afterimages surrounded Zaraki. It's a child's play. Zaraki said mockingly. Is that so? Well, stop this then. Muyang immediately stormed toward Zaraki along with his afterimages. It was like a dozen people were ganging up on Zaraki. Despite mocking him earlier, Zaraki was cautious of Muyang's attack. Dong 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 dong. Zaraki did his best to block the attacks directed at him, but even he couldn't keep up with all the afterimages as he was wounded in various parts of his body and his clothes were torn apart. Muyang then shook his head while waiting for Zaraki's response. Sure enough, it's child's play. You're fast indeed, but your strike lacks power. It doesn't even hurt one bit. Muyang hated to admit it, but Zaraki was right. He hasn't mastered his Zanpakuto's abilities yet. At his current state, he couldn't harness his Zanpakuto perfectly. If he enhanced the speed, he'll be lacking on strength. Zaraki indeed received many wounds, but all of them was insignificant as it was minor injuries. TSK, I still have ways to go. Muyang cursed his own shortcoming and raised his Zanpakuto. He believed that he could defeat Zaraki even though he hasn't mastered his Zanpakuto's abilities yet. Ding dang ding dang. The fierce battle once again resumed. Muyang originally thought that he was better than Zaraki in every aspect, and he should be able to easily defeat him, but he miscalculated one thing, willpower. Although he has been through a lot of this after coming to this world, including killing 100 or so people that has somewhat boosted his willpower, a half-ass willpower like Muyang's wouldn't be able to best Zaraki. Their prolonged fight finally took a toll on their body as they both panted, trying to catch their breath. Both Muyang and Zaraki almost hit their limit, but Zaraki was in a better state due to his personality that would excite him the more thrilling the battle he was in. I completely underestimated you. Muyang said as he wiped the sweat from his face. Muyang didn't have a room to breathe like earlier. The wounds on his body were still throbbing. Although the bleeding has stopped, it significantly hindered his movements, especially the wound on his chest, the biggest one so far. Meanwhile, Zaraki was in no better condition. With 2 mortal wounds that he suffered, he was only a few inches away from losing his life. At first, Muyang thought that he should defeat Zaraki without killing him so it wouldn't affect the anime plot in the future, but after fighting him firsthand Muyang immediately scratched out that idea. Considering Zaraki's personality, Muyang would die for sure if he let his guard down for even a second. As Kimura Kanzuya said, once one drew their sword, the bloodbath would follow, and one may not spare any effort once they've drawn their sword if they wanted to survive. That was how you show respect to your opponent as well. Since we both almost reach our limit, let's settle this with the next attack. Muyang said to Zaraki as he was afraid his body couldn't take it anymore. So, one strike decides everything. Count me in. The ground shook and yellowish Ryatsu that resembled a skull burst out of Zaraki's body. A faint azure Ryatsu also burst out of Muyang's body. Although it didn't seem as flashy as Zaraki's, it was no weaker for sure. With both hands clenching his Zanpakuto, Muyang used everything he got to intercept Zaraki's attack. Their fierce Ryatsu collision set off a gust of wind, destroying everything around them and created a big hold where they stood. Zaraki fell down along with his Zanpakuto. With a thump, Zaraki fell to the ground, and Zanpakuto fell weakly in his hand. "Seems like it's your win," Muyang murmured as he watched Zaraki fell to the ground. "BSSS." Muyang vomited a mouthful of blood as fell to the ground, using his sword that he embedded into the ground to support his body that has lost its strength. "I lost despite having the upper hand in every aspect. As expected of Zaraki. You managed to push me this far even though I'm supposed to be stronger than you." Muyang sat while looking at Zaraki with mixed feelings. He was the first character in the anime that he encountered, and that encounter was not very pleasant as it was a battle to death right off the bat. As a bunch of thoughts occupied Muyang's mind, the fatigue caught up and he fell asleep before realizing it. The prolonged battles exhausted Muyang, and he was finally awakened by hunger. "Yo, are you awake?" A hoarse voice startled him right after he was awake. He immediately knew it was Zaraki's voice. He couldn't forget such a distinctive voice, especially right after fighting to the death with that voice's owner. Muyang immediately held the hilt of his Zanpakuto. He was wary of Zaraki, who might be still itching for a fight. Now, if I really want to kill you, I wouldn't wait until now, would I?" Zaraki casually made an innuendo. Muyang realized he was mistaken because he remembered Zaraki's personality. He wouldn't do anything cowardly such as killing his opponent in their sleep. Even though he did realize his mistake, Muyang was too embarrassed to admit it. "It can't be helped, right? You charged straight at me all of a sudden and challenged me to a fight for no reason." Tisk. Zaraki just clicked his tongue without saying anything back. Muyang was at a loss for words because Zaraki just straight out ignored him when something was thrown his way. It turned out that was a piece of bread that Zaraki threw. He almost mistook it for a stone since it was so hard. Muyang stared at Zaraki doubtfully, but Zaraki once again ignored him, which really put him on the spot. He took a bite of the bread, and it almost knocked away his teeth. "Why are you here, by the way? Shouldn't you be at Zaraki District?" Muyang looked at Zaraki with a puzzled look. Zaraki frowned and said, "This is Zaraki District, and what do you mean by that question? Did you know me?" "What? This is Zaraki District. How did I end up here?" Muyang was shocked. He planned to go to Siriidii but ended up in Zaraki District and brawled with the infamous violent fighter, Zaraki. Fate really took an interesting turn. But at this point, Muyang was too busy thinking of a reason for his blunder earlier. About that. Forget it. If you don't want to say it, then don't. It's not important anyway. What? Muyang was shocked by how easily Zaraki let it slide. Did he simply not care, or was he just an idiot? There Muyang was, racking his brain to find the plausible reason to convince Zaraki, but the one he tried to convince wasn't concerned about it at all. Muyang bit the bread with all his might as he realized that Zaraki was more annoying than Kanzuya in a way. Kanzuya enjoyed teasing and mocking him, especially during their spar. Meanwhile, Zaraki could easily annoy him without him realizing it right after their fight to the death. Muyang tried to regain his composure by convincing himself that Zaraki simply got a screw loose, unlike most people. "You are strong. I did lose just now, but I'll beat you next time," Zaraki said seriously at Muyang. Muyang panicked, followed by sweat dripping from his foreheads at the thought that Zaraki would challenge him to a fight every time he saw him. Muyang was thinking about changing Zaraki's mind, but after giving it some time, he figured out that he wouldn't be able to convince a man like him who had nothing but fight in his mind. "By the way, what's the deal with those lot earlier? Why did they gang up on you?" After racking his brain for a while to find a topic, he decided to ask Zaraki this question. He was the strongest character in the anime, after all. Even though he was hard to approach, it wouldn't hurt to try. After looking at Muyang dumbfoundedly for a while as if Muyang just asked a completely dumb question, Zaraki finally replied, "This is Zaraki District." It was a simple answer, but it definitely answered Muyang's question since Zaraki District was the most lawless district in Seoul society, and whatever happened there shouldn't come off as surprising any longer, but the look on Zaraki's face made Muyang lose his patience. He couldn't say for sure he wouldn't cut this guy down if he stayed there for another minute, so he immediately stood up and decided to leave even though he wasn't fully recovered yet. "Well, I'll take my leave then, Zaraki." "Zaraki? Kenpachi." Zaraki was startled when he heard Muyang's words. Muyang realized he just messed up once again. At this point, Zaraki didn't even have a name yet, let alone became a Kenpachi. "I'm just a person without a name, and Kenpachi is a title that I don't deserve yet." It was Muyang's turn to be surprised this time. He thought Zaraki was just a country bumpkin, but it turned out that he knew about Kenpachi. It seemed that there were some things that he didn't know. "Are you going to Siriidi? What's your name so that I can find you?" "Yeah, why don't you go with me?" Muyang casually blurted out, which he regretted almost immediately. If Zaraki went to Siriidi with him now, who would save the cute lowly, Yachiru? Fortunately, Muyang's worry didn't come to pass. "No, I won't be going to Siriidi for now. I will save that until I'm strong enough to take the title Kenpachi for my own." Zaraki said something else after that, but Muyang did not quite catch what he said. Nonetheless, he was relieved that Yachiru's life wouldn't take a different turn because of him. "You haven't told me your name." "My name is He." Muyang suddenly stopped as he remembered what Kanzuya once said. It didn't seem like a good idea to have a Chinese name in that world since it would draw unnecessary attention, and it was against his principle. While Muyang was at a loss, the image of Kanzuya's wretched smile when he said, "Be my grandson," entered his mind. Looking back now, he realized there was warmth behind those words. "He what?" Zaraki frowned. "My name is Kimura Muyang." Muyang, who suddenly became Kimura Muyang now, said to Zaraki with a smile on his face. "Kimura Muyang. Alright, make sure not to die before I cut you down next time we meet." Muyang was speechless upon hearing Zaraki's words. "Aren't you going?" "Well, I don't think I've recovered yet. I guess I'll wait for a while." Zaraki eyed Muyang weirdly and said, "Do whatever you want." Muyang had a feeling that Zaraki knew something that he didn't. He regretted only watching the anime without reading the manga. Well, he figured that he would stick around for a while and see what he could find. Phew. At long last. Siriidi. Kimura Muyang burst into tears the moment he laid his eyes on the orderly streets of Siriidi. Due to his suspicion of Zaraki, he decided to stick around to see if he could find something out of Zaraki, which was the beginning of his misery. At first, since they both were stuck with their injuries, he was merely annoyed at Zaraki because of his personality. Even so, the two eventually got along to some extent. However, once they recovered from their injuries, Zaraki kept pestering him for a fight. They would fight until they were black and blue and fought again once they've recovered. This cycle repeated for 1 year, upon recalling that year never failed to bring Kimura Muyang to tears. In the end, Kimura Muyang couldn't find out anything and simply sparred with Zaraki for a whole year. Even though he has learned a lot under Kimura Kanzuya's care, he realized that he still had ways to go when it came to actual battle during his times with Zaraki. It was during the 1 year with Zaraki that helped him in actual battle. He could feel his strength amplifying with each battle with Zaraki, and now after 1 year, he was confident that he would be able to stand on equal ground with captains as long as they didn't use Bankai. However, just as Kimura Muyang grew stronger significantly because of Zaraki, Zaraki also grew stronger because of him, and at a faster rate than Kimura Muyang too. So, after realizing that he couldn't learn anything else from Zaraki, he decided to leave Zaraki district and headed for Siriidi before Zaraki became even stronger than him. "I would have lost to him if we sparred a few more times. Running while I'm still winning, as expected of yours truly. Kimura Muyang mumbled when he recalled his days with Saraki. But really, though, what's the deal with that guys? It's like he has bottomless potential. Is he a legendary Super Saiyan? Kimura Kanzuya thought as he walked into Siriidii, completely unaware of the stares from everybody around him as they were trying to guess whether he was bold or just a complete fool. The sound of a heavy object cutting through the air snapped Kimura Muyang back to his senses. Upon realizing it was directed at him, he instinctively drew his Zanpakuto and launched a shockwave through to repel the attack and sheathed it right after. What happened afterwards was the spectator gasping one after another. Upon leveling his gaze, he saw a gigantic man with an intimidating face standing in front of him. What? He destroyed Danzamaru's weapon with one blow. Has there always been a man that strong in Rokkangai? So strong. Unbelievable. Anyone knows that guy? He may be from a district around here. Like Saraki district. Kimura Muyang immediately became the topic among the bystanders. After all, that was their first time seeing someone defeated the guard of the Black Ridge Gate. Siriidii has always been the place that everyone admired. So, a lot of people had mixed feelings about Shinigami, they idolized them and envied them at the same time. Hey, who are you? Why did you attack me all of a sudden without saying a word? Kimura Muyang said, but he noticed the man in front of him seemed kind of afraid. Seeing the man's terrified look, Kimura Muyang began to wonder why would a person as intimidating as him so afraid of him that he couldn't say a word. Good grief, you're something else. Since when did he? Kimura Muyang was startled when he heard the lazy voice coming from behind. He realized that an average captain wouldn't be able to do this. Upon turning around, a bright color entered his view. It was a middle-aged man with thin facial hair around his mouth and his cheeks, wearing a Tsujigasa straw hat and a pink, flowered lady's kimono draped across the man's shoulder and over his captain's uniform. Shunsui. Kimura Muyang blurted out in surprise. Huh? Kairaku Shunsui was stunned. Do you know me? You insolent. How dare you call the captain's name so casually? A cursing was heard behind Kairaku Shunsui. Kimura Muyang was sweating like crazy. He actually dug his grave once again by saying unnecessary things, and Shunsui was not like a simple-minded Zaraki. Lisa-chan, no need to be so angry about it. But, Captain. A shy voice earlier said. Kimura couldn't believe that he met both Kairaku Shunsui and Lisa, his lieutenant. It's rude of him to call you without honorifics, Captain Kairaku. Say, do you know me? That's. I heard about you from some people. The captain who wears flowery robes. Captain, it seems your bad reputation has spread even to Rokkangai. Is that so? Kairaku Shunsui seemed a little skeptical, but he didn't pry any further. Captain Kairaku. A trembling voice suddenly interrupted. Ah, it's you, Danzamaru. Kairaku Shunsui turned around and looked at Danzamaru, who was standing rigidly on the side. What's with the commotion? I happened to pass by and saw what happened. Did this young man do anything wrong? Passing by. Aren't you going to the bar to have some drink, Captain? Lisa's exasperated voice immediately retorted. Kairaku Shunsui laughed embarrassedly and waved his hand. Lisa-chan, you shouldn't badmouth your captain in front of others, you know. That makes it hard for me to leave. Danzamaru glanced at Kimura Muyang with a hint of fear and said, he entered Siriidii without having the pass. Ah, come to think of it, I haven't quite caught your name yet. It's rude of me. My name is Kimura Muyang. Kimura, was it? It was like something came to Kairaku Shuansui's mind. Well, Mr. Kimura, what business do you have in Siriidii? The look on Kairaku Shuansui's eyes suddenly changed as he held his straw hat. I'm sorry, I don't know that I must have a pass to enter. Kimura Muyang said as he scratched his head, and then he added, actually, I plan to go to Shino Academy. Shino. Kairaku Shunsui clearly doubted Kimura Muyang's words. Although he did not know the extent of Kimura Muyang's strength, considering he could launch a shock wave and destroy Danzamaru's Zanpakuto in one blow, he should be at least as strong as a lieutenant. Why bother going to Shino Academy? This thought crossed Kairaku Shuansue's mind, but he didn't show it in his face. You're pretty strong as you are. Why do you want to go to Shino? You should be able to join Godiai 13 in your current state. Really? After hearing Kairaku Shuansue's acknowledgement, Kimura Muyang couldn't contain his excitement. Unlike Zaraki Kenpachi, who was still young, even this senior captain acknowledged his strength. However, well, I've never had any proper training as a Shinigami, so I figured I should go to Shino Academy. I see. After pondering for a while, Kairaku Shunsui then said, I'll take you to see old man Yamamoto. In any case, whether you want to join Godiai 13 directly or go to Shino, you'll have to get old man Yamamoto's approval first. Captain Commander Yamamoto. Kimura Muyang almost forgot to breathe because he was nervous that he was about to meet the Captain Commander himself. Follow me. Kairaku Shunsui led the way to First Division without giving Kimura Muyang a chance to think. Wait for me. Seeing that Kairaku Shunsui had left, Kimura Muyang quickly turned around and glanced at Danzamaru, who was still standing there. Seeing Danzamaru's broken sword, Kimura Muyang apologetically said, I don't know there is such a thing as a pass to enter. I'm sorry for destroying your weapon. I'll be sure to pay you back next time. Kimura Muyang then immediately used Shuanpa to catch up with Kairaku Shunsui. Reporting in Captain Commander, Captain Kairaku has brought that Rukongai man to First Division barracks. Let them pass, and tell Kairaku to come here right away. Understood. Yamamoto's eyes, which were partially closed slits most of the time, were slightly opened as he gazed at the clouds on the horizon. Captain Commander Yamamoto could sense that in terms of Ryatsu alone, the man that Kairaku brought was already at captain's class. He couldn't say for sure whether this would be good or bad for Siriidii, but if that man proved to be hostile, he personally would take care of it personally. A gleam of light flashed in his eyes and the Ryatsu that Yamamoto restrained oozing out, causing the rise of temperature in the surrounding. Captain Kairaku, can you slow down? Wait for me. Kimura Muyang said as he finally caught up with Kairaku Shunsui after using Shuanpa in succession. He's pretty fast. Is it just me, or is his ho-ho extremely practical even though it's not as refined? Seeing Shuanpa of Kimura Muyang, Kairaku Shunsui secretly thought. So fast. His Shuanpa was faster than mine, and I can barely catch his movement with my eye. I surely still have ways to go. Lisa was depressed upon seeing Kimura Muyang's ho-ho. Ah. Captain Kairaku, are we going to the First Division? Kimura Muyang asked as he was now standing shoulder to shoulder with Kairaku Shunsui. Lisa wanted to warn Kimura Muyang that it was rude of him to walk side by side with Captain Kairaku. However, before she changed her mind as Kairaku Shuansui's eyes glanced at her. She just clicked her tongue since Kimura Muyang didn't know his place. Yeah, we're going there to consult old Yamamoto. To be honest, you can become a lieutenant as you are now, especially now when Godiai 13 is short-handed. Really? Hearing Kairaku Shuansui's explanation, Kimura Muyang sighed in relief since he was afraid that he was in trouble. But he was nervous nonetheless when he thought of seeing Yamamoto Genryusai in person because he was no ordinary old man. Kairaku Shunsui couldn't help but laugh when he noticed the nervous look on Kimura Muyang's face. Realizing that Kimura Muyang was no different than the kids around his age, he finally let his guard down and relieved him, no need to be all nervous. Old Yamamoto is quite amiable. Just think it like visiting an ordinary old man. But after saying those words, even Kairaku Shunsui couldn't find it but slightly funny because no one would believe that old Yamamoto was a kind old man, considering his intimidating appearance. However, when Kairaku Shunsui glanced at Kimura Muyang, who kept up with his pace with no problem, he smiled slightly. He still had to see what the young man beside him got, so old Yamamoto would have an easier time making his decision. Now, Kimura-san, old Yamamoto should have already known that we are coming. We should pick up the pace, can't let the old man wait after all. What? Then let's hurry, Captain Kairaku. Kairaku Shunsui turned at Lisa and said, Lisa-chan, we're going to pick up the pace. You should go back ahead of me. Don't look down on me, Captain. I can keep up just fine. Lisa felt like Kairaku Shunsui underestimated him, so he wanted to teach him a lesson. However, before she could do so, the two men in front of her immediately disappeared, and she could only see their silhouette. Lisa was annoyed and muttered, setting Captain aside, how was that lowly brat so fast? This is just unpleasant. I guess I will find Hirako and invite him to drink. Kairaku Shunsui was surprised when he noticed that Kimura Muyang still managed to keep up with him. It was 70% of his top speed, yet Kimura Muyang still followed closely behind him, although he was slightly out of breath. He realized that he underestimated Kimura Muyang earlier because just based on his shunpa, he knew that he couldn't generalize Kimura Muyang's strength at lieutenant level. We're here. Kimura Muyang immediately stopped, slightly panting. That pace just now was quite exhausting for him. He realized that there was still quite a gap with a veteran captain, and hats off to Kairaku Shunsui, even at that speed and distance, he didn't seem tired at all. Captain Kairaku, Captain Commander told you to see him at once. A figure that suddenly appeared in front of Kairaku Shunsui said. I figured old Yamamoto already knew. Let's go, Kimura. Oh, okay. Kimura Muyang followed closely behind Kairaku Shunsui as they walked toward the 1st Division barracks. There were only 2 of them in the empty aisle. The entire 1st Division had this tense atmosphere, which made Kimura Muyang tense again. I'm here, old Yamamoto. I brought you a new recruit. A slight hunched silhouette stood on the top of the stairs. Although it is not tall, it had this majestic aura oozing from within him. The figure already emitted massive pressure on Kimura Muyang by just standing there. Brat, have you never learned any manners? A stern voice came from Captain Commander Yamamoto. Ah. Oh. I'm Kimura Muyang. Pleased to meet you, Captain Commander Yamamoto. Kimura Muyang. Yamamoto Genryusai immediately turned around toward Kimura Muyang with his eyes slightly opened and closed it again. Are you from Rokkangai? Do you wish to become a Shinigami? It sounded more like an affirming sentence rather than a question when Yamamoto Genryusai said it. Yeah, I came from Kusajishi district and wanted to go to Shino Academy to become a Shinigami. Kusajishi district. Now that's a chaotic place to come from. Kairaku Shunsui interjected. In all seriousness, though, who taught you? Why would you go to Shino with your current strength? I'm not qualified to become a Shinigami without a proper education after all. Kimura Muyang said due to his seriousness, and then he added, as for my skills, I learned it from a certain old man. An old man? It was as if seeing Captain Commander Yamamoto knew who Kimura Muyang was talking about because his sharp gaze was suddenly directed at Kimura Muyang. However, Captain Commander Yamamoto's eyes were back to partially closed slits like usual, and he didn't pry any further regarding this matter. Kimura Muyang didn't know what Captain Commander Yamamoto was thinking at this moment. Kimura Kanzuya has been living on the corner of Kusajishi district for so long. Kimura Muyang wondered whether that old man had made some sort of fatal mistake or not. If there was any enmity between him and Captain Commander Yamamoto, it wasn't impossible for Yamamoto Genryusai to order someone to assassinate him. Fortunately, he didn't pry any further because Kimura Muyang didn't know what to say if he did. I'll have you attend Shino Academy to learn some basic. In any case, you'll be the one taking him to Shino Academy tomorrow and make the usual arrangement, Shunsui. Godei 13 is in dire need of capable hands right now. Learn the basic as fast as possible and join Godei 13. Yamamoto Genryusai made his decision without asking Kimura Muyang. Kimura Muyang himself was about to say something, but Kairaku Shunsui immediately dragged him away. Just leave it to me, old Yamamoto. Captain Kairaku, what's with the hurry? Kimura Muyang looked at Kairaku Shunsui, puzzled. There is nothing more to say. Once old Yamamoto has made a decision, it can't be changed. Might as well leave as fast as possible before he begins his lecture. Well, I don't want that either, so where are you taking me? And where do I have to stay tonight? Of course, we're going to have a drink. This is the best time for drinking after all. Really? I don't think so. Kimura Muyang said as he noticed the sun was still high in the sky. He realized that Kairaku Shunsui was such a hopeless drinker. We should go now before we run out of seats. First Division, Captain's Office. A silhouette suddenly appeared behind Yamamoto Genryusai. You sense it too, right, Chojiro? Yes, Captain Commander. It's Kimura Kinzuya's Ryatsu. Although faintly, I couldn't possibly mistake his Ryatsu that came from that kid. An old man, huh? Yamamoto Genryusai said softly with a smile, but since he is Kimura Kinzuya's apprentice, he should be fine. Besides, you'll be keeping an eye on him. Of course, I will watch his growth closely. Good grief, Lisa-chan. That's so cold of you to leave your captain and drink by yourself. Captain. Lisa's cheeks were flushed. Her captain sure didn't hold back, even though Hirako was sitting in front of her. Whether it was intentional or not, upon seeing Lisa's flushed face, Kairaku Shunsui said with a concerned look, Lisa-chan, don't tell me you're drunk already. If you're a light drinker, keep it in moderation, you hear? Lisa rolled her eyes as she left Kairaku Shunsui and returned to her seat. Afternoon, Captain Kairaku. Good day, Captain Kairaku. Don't mind me, guys. This is a tavern, after all. Kairaku Shunsui waved his hand to make sure everyone wasn't tense because of his presence as he introduced Kimura Muyang to everyone. Let me introduce you. This is Kimura Muyang. Kimura Muyang was excited when he saw all the familiar faces around him. But he has learned from his past mistakes now. So despite his excitement, he would pretend this was his first time seeing them. Hirako Shinji, 10th Division 4th Seat. I'm pleased to make your acquaintance. I may not be much of a help but, what are you hitting me for all of a sudden, Hiyori? Hiyori, a girl with freckles on her face, looked at Hirako Shinji and said while raising her fist, the look on your face pisses me off. She then turned at Kimura Muyang and smiled, revealing two cute snaggle teeth, don't mind that baldy, I'm Hiyori. 12th Division 5th Seat. You can ask me anything you want. I'm pretty sure I'd be more helpful, at least more than Shinji. Okay, I'll call you Hiyori. Thanks for your consideration. You seem really close with Hirako. Are you blind or something? His face is just so satisfying to step on, that's all. Hirako Shinji seemed displeased when he heard Hiyori's words. Hey, Hiyori, what do you mean by that, huh? It means exactly like how it sounds. Hiyori said as he kicked Hirako right in the face. Hiyori. Hirako yelled furiously, and so the two of them squabbled. Kimura Muyang was speechless, knew that these two were always arguing. Don't mind them. That's just how they are. My name is Muguruma Kensei, 2nd Division 9th Seat. This one is Kuna Mashiro, 4th Division 9th Seat. Kens, you big dummy, I can introduce myself just fine. The lime green-haired Kuna Mashiro strangled Kensei's neck as she yelled her hearts out. The vein on Kensei's forehead bulged as he was losing his patience over Kuna Mashiro that suddenly strangled him. Apparently, Kensei and Mashiro were not that much different from Hiyori and Hirako, so Kimura Muyang just sighed in his heart, trying to convince himself that this was nothing unusual for them. Calm down, don't mind them. That was just how they were. However, he did feel their banter was somehow nostalgic, as if it was some fleeting memories in the past. Upon turning around his head, an eccentric-looking man came into his view. The man was wearing a pair of mirrored sunglasses, with a classic rounded afro and long sideburns. Kimura Muyang almost failed to contain his laughter the first time he saw this man's hair. My name is Love Ekawa, Kimura Muyang, is it? Let's have a seat over there. Love, your hairstyle is really... What about it? It's pretty cool, right? I think so too. Ah ha 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 ha. Yeah, it's really cool. Kimura Muyang said while wiping the sweat on his forehead. He lost the chance to blatantly convey his opinion. Is it that hot? Why are you sweating? Love Ekawa asked when he saw Kimura Muyang wiping his sweat. No, it's just so lively here, that's all. Well, everyone is perky for sure. Come with me. Let's sit with Captain Kairaku. Sure. Kimura Muyang followed Love Ekawa, ignoring Hirako and the rest, who were still exchanging banter with each other, and approached Kairaku Shunsui, who happened to be with Lisa. Upon noticing what Kairaku Shunsui was drinking, plus having Lisa pouring it for him, Kimura Muyang was so envious of him. It was clear that a captain's lifestyle was nothing like ordinary Shinigami. Humph. Lisa was disgruntled when she saw Love Ekawa brought Kimura Muyang over. It seemed that she didn't really like being around him. Kimura Muyang smiled wryly, without knowing how he offended this erotic manga reader. Although she seemed mature, she was such a tsundere girl. Have you introduced yourself to all of them? If you have, try the sake, it's really good, you know. Do you like sake? You too, Love. Have a seat, no need to hold back. Let's have a drink together. Yes, they are all good people. I have never tried sake yet, but I do want to try. Yes, they are all talented indeed. Had you come 10 years sooner, you'd be our peers and graduate from the academy together. To be precise, I have graduated for 10 years, and we didn't exactly graduate at the same time. Some of us are at different grades. Love interjected. No need to sweat such a small detail, Love. Kairaku Shunsui slapped Love's back while laughing. So you guys have only graduated recently? Yet, you've all become seated officers in your respective divisions. That's amazing. Especially Lisa, who has become a lieutenant. Hearing Kimura Muyang's words, Lisa fiercely glared at him, leaving Kimura Muyang confused. He wanted to compliment Lisa, but it seemed that his attempt in flattery had taken the wrong turn. Lisa-chan is not a lieutenant yet, but we don't have a lieutenant in the 8th division, so Lisa-chan is basically like our temporary lieutenant, Shunsui said with a smile. Kimura Muyang was surprised that his compliment backfired. Kimura Muyang. Lisa sounded surprisingly calm. HM. What's the matter? Kimura Muyang had a feeling that something bad was about to happen because Lisa sounded completely calm. Sure enough, Lisa's next sentence proved his suspicion. I'm pretty sure Captain Commander said you'd be going to Shino, right? That makes all of us here your senpai then. Lisa thought that even though Kimura Muyang might be stronger than her and his shunpa was faster than her, she was still his senpai in this case. Kimura Muyang realized that Lisa was right, but wouldn't it be awkward for him to call them senpai? Kimura, are you going to Shino? That makes me your senpai. Don't worry, I will look after you in the future. Hiyori immediately left Hirako alone when he heard Lisa and jumped in front of Kimura Muyang. Meanwhile, Hirako Shinji was circling around Kimura Muyang, seemingly deep in thought. What are you looking at, bald Shinji? Hiyori asked as he kicked Hirako's ass. Hiyori, you little. Hirako wanted to scold Hiyori but refrained from doing so once he saw Hiyori raised her fist. He then looked at Kimura Muyang instead and said, despite faint, I can sense your strength to some extent. Why did you want to go to Shino Academy at your current state? Ah, I wanted to ask that as well. I'm positive that you're no ordinary man. Kensei added. Is he? Even though he seems so scrawny. Hiyori doubted. Captain Kairaku. Love looked towards Kairaku Shunsui. You'll see for yourself eventually. I won't say a word. Let's just have a drink. Seeing Kairaku Shunsei's secretive attitude, they gave up asking and poured Kimura Muyang a drink. The tavern seemed to be effective in closing the distance between them all. Kimura even managed to get closer with Lisa. At least she shouldn't seek his fault in every little thing now. Of course, this didn't come cheap as he couldn't sleep in his room. Damn, my head hurts. Kimura Muyang drank too much last night because of the heat of the moment. Seeing the tidy room, he was trying to guess where he was and who brought him there. As he opened the door, the blinding sunlight forced him to squint. Tisk, you're finally awake. Lisa's displeased voice was heard right after Kimura Muyang pushed the door open. Oh, what time is it now? I have to go to the academy. Kimura Muyang immediately asked. Thank God you at least remember about that because the school already started while you're asleep. What? The look on Kimura Muyang's face changed once he heard what Lisa just said. Although the courses were basically optional, the thought of skipping his first day at the academy left him speechless. Seeing Kimura Muyang seemed at a loss, Lisa chuckled and then explained, Relax, you're not even a student there yet, so it doesn't matter. I'll take you there and explain your circumstances. You will? How about Captain Kairaku? Humph. Lisa grunted, Are you saying that I can't handle it? That's not it. I'm just asking what happened to Captain Kairaku, that's all. Lisa, who seemed even more annoyed, just said, Follow me, as she walked away. Kimura Muyang was kind of hungry, but he dared not ask about breakfast after seeing Lisa was in such a bad mood even though he didn't know what he did wrong, so he just followed her while keeping his mouth shut. Damn, where did that good-for-nothing captain go? Not only did he shove every division-related affair to me, but he also asked me to take this guy to Shino Academy. Just wait and see, I'll find all of your sake and drink it myself. Kairaku Shunsui, who was lazing around on the roof, suddenly felt an ominous wind. What's that ominous feeling just now? Screw it. I've got Lisa-chan to take care of everything. How fortunate I am to be blessed with a capable subordinate. Kairaku Shunsui was lazing around without knowing that the capable subordinate he just mentioned planned to teach him a lesson. Is this Shino Academy? Kimura Muyang was in awe once he laid his eyes on the building in front of him. This was the place that gave birth to most skilled Shinigamis in Siriidii. Almost all of Godii 13's members graduated from this academy. It was the cornerstone of Soul Society. The thought that crossed his mind made him admire Yamamoto Genryusai even more because he was the founder of this academy. Come on. I will take you to Vice Headmaster and explain your situation to him. You even know the Vice Headmaster. That's amazing. Kimura Muyang pretended to be amazed. Lisa just glanced at Kimura Muyang without saying anything before she walked away. Kimura Muyang immediately shut his mouth as she can't afford to make the situation even more awkward. Kimura Muyang barely had any experience with women, be it in the past or present life, so he didn't really know what Lisa was thinking. Women were fickle creatures to begin with. Finally took care of that guy's business, and I'm almost done with the division-related affairs. I guess it's time to find those good sakes that Captain hid and drink it with Shinji. Lisa seemed to be in a good mood after taking care of Kimura Muyang's registration as she planned what she would do once she got back. Lisa caught something in her peripheral vision and stepped back to make sure. As she looked to the right, the veins on her head instantly bulged. Asuka. So this is where you're lazing around. Lisa said while gnashing her teeth. The person that Lisa called was leaning against the wall, dozing off. However, he suddenly lifted his head and wiped his drool. why is it so cold even though the sun is still high? Lisa couldn't contain her anger any longer. She had to do everything while her captain was slacking off, and now she even found that captain's subordinate was also slacking off. Lisa immediately drew her zanpakuto and slashed the man who leaned against the wall. This bloodthirst. The man's eyes were wide open all of a sudden, and he immediately rolled to the side, dodging Lisa's strike. He wanted to say a piece of his mind, but once he saw Lisa was the one who attacked him just now, he was ready to run away. I dare you to run. Let's see if you can dodge the next 1 inch. Lisa's warning stopped him in his tracks. The man named Asuka was on the verge of tears as he turned around and called out Lisa's name. Humph! Realizing Asuka had no intention to escape anymore, Lisa sheathed her zanpakuto and blew her fist as she walked towards him. Seeing Lisa had no intention to spare him, Asuka was even more terrified. Can you at least not hit my face? Asuka pleaded. You should have known better. Pa 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 pa. Eh ha ha hi. After beating up Asuka's face to her heart's content, Lisa dusted off her hands and said casually, I can at least let you rest for 2 days now after seeing that face of yours. If you run again the next time you see me, you'll know what's coming. You can run, but you can't hide. Asuka couldn't do anything except gently stroking his beaten-up face while watching the smug on Lisa's face. Captain Commander has already explained everything. You'll be starting from 1st grade, but Captain Commander mentioned that you would be graduating with 6 other students next year. That being said, there are only 9 months left, but since Captain Commander said so, he must have had his reasons. Huh? 9 months? Are they trying to set a record or something? Even Shiro-chan, Dabai and Ginzi graduated in 1 year. No one has graduated in 9 months so far. Kimura felt like a genius for skipping grades. Okay, your dormitory and other stuff will be taken care of by someone else, so you may go. After half an hour. Kimura Muyang put on his Shino's Academy uniform and looked at himself in the mirror. Kimura Muyang had mixed feelings. It has been about 30 years since he came to this world, and now he finally arrived at Shino Academy and became Shino's student, and eventually became an official Shinigami in 9 months. As Kimura Muyang looked at himself in his academy uniform, he realized that he missed school and his life as a student. He looked forward to it even though he didn't know how Shino's education system worked. Moreover, he would be dubbed as a super genius who would graduate in 9 months, which was really unprecedented in the history of Seoul society. Although it didn't match with his low-key principle, he couldn't help but find himself drowning in pride. It has been less than 3 months since Kimura Muyang enrolled at Shino Academy, and he has become the hot topic among everyone in the academy, mainly because he was considered the prodigy who skipped grade all the way to 6th grade in less than 3 months. Humph. Watanabe Ichiro was disgruntled upon hearing the students around him talked about Kimura Muyang. Just ignore those ignorant lot, Watanabe-sama. You're the true prodigy of Seoul society, while that fellow is just a peasant from Rukongai. He's not even worth comparing with you. That's right. You are the true genius. The other students just don't know that you got your own zanpakuto in the 1st grade. Yes, those ignorant people. That's enough. Watanabe Ichiro's eyes were full of disdain as he heard the empty and fake flattery from the people around him. The rest of them immediately shut their mouth as they were afraid of displeasing Watanabe Ichiro any further. Seeing their reaction, Watanabe Ichiro dismissed them with a disgusted look. Look! It's Kimura. For real. Where? So cool. Some love-struck girls were looking at Kimura Muyang with awe. What's so special about him? Tisk, say that right to his face if you dare. Why wouldn't I? After hearing how everyone admired Kimura Muyang, a young man planned to challenge him to prove that he was much stronger than him. You seem really confident in your skills, huh? Another student said as if complimenting the young man's guts. However, by the next second, his knee was shaking. I heard that even Asano-sensei was no match for him. You must have been really confident. Asano-sensei, the Zenjutsu instructor. Yeah, it was last night. Kimura wanted to ask for a grade skip again, and Asano-sensei said he would test him himself. In the end, the teacher lost even though he didn't use Shirkai, but that goes the same for Kimura. It can't be. I heard that teacher Asano used to be 9th Division's lieutenant. Are you saying Kimura is as strong as a lieutenant? It's hard to say. It's not completely impossible either. After all, he is the strongest prodigy in the history of Soul Society. The young man who wanted to challenge Kimura Muyang was sweating like crazy. He went ahead and boasted that he'd challenge Kimura Muyang, but after hearing he was as strong as a lieutenant, he got cold feet. He couldn't even handle a seated officer, let alone a lieutenant, so he was racking his brain to find a plausible excuse to get out of this predicament. Ah, are you okay? It's not that hot, so why are you sweating? The person beside the young man asked with concern. Huh? Ah. My stomach. I've got a stomachache. Maybe I ate something bad this morning. Excuse me, I'm going to the toilet. The man ran while stroking his stomach. Seeing the young man ran in panic, the rest of them couldn't help but laugh since it was such a bad excuse. However, no one looked down on him. After all, no student could handle Kimura Muyang. Kimura Muyang has long been accustomed to everyone's respect and admiration for him. It just couldn't be helped that everyone admired him. After all, he skipped all the way to 6th grade in merely 3 months, which has never happened in the history of Soul Society and probably never will. Even geniuses like Toshiro and Jin graduated from Shino in 1 year. Hadn't he watched the anime, he wouldn't know there would be an absurdly strong character named Kurosaki Ichigo, who managed to stand toe-to-toe with a captain in merely 1 year of training and learned Bankai in just 3 days from Urahara Kisuke. He also had to keep in mind that there would be a terrifyingly powerful man named Aizen in the future, so he couldn't let his guard down. The smarter you are, you would feel you know less, and the stronger you become, the weaker you felt. Kimura Muyang was undoubtedly strong, but it was precisely because he knew where he was at that he feared Aizen. After all, he easily toyed around with the whole Godei 13. It might sound like an exaggeration, but his strength was undeniable. In short, Kimura Muyang became the way he was now because he looked at most things objectively. Watanabe Ichiro was overwhelmed with hatred and jealousy when he saw Kimura Muyang casually ignored all the praises and admiration everyone directed at him. He used to be the Academy's prodigy. He was second to none whether in Zenjutsu, Hakuda, Kido, and Hoho. However, after Kimura Muyang came, all his achievements were overshadowed by Kimura Muyang's, and everyone admired Kimura Muyang now instead of him. Kimura Muyang opened the door, and he found everyone has already with their close friends, chatting. Even geniuses had their own problems, like solitude. He has been attending the academy for 3 months, and he still had no one that he could call a close friend. Of course, it was partly because he kept skipping grades, but even so, he was sort of lonely. He suddenly missed Hirako and the others because they were the first friends he met. Can I sit here? Kimura Muyang turned and saw a handsome young man standing next to him, with long hair in a shawl, pointed nose, and fair skin. He was a handsome man for sure, said Kimura Muyang in his heart. Kimura Muyang nodded and let him have a seat beside him while pondering what his intention was. My name is Aranmura Shirshin, a pleasure to make your acquaintance. Kimura Muyang was amazed by how straightforward Aranmura Shirshin was, but after seeing his sincere eyes, Kimura Muyang reached out his hand despite hesitant for a moment. Kimura Muyang, the pleasure is mine. Tavern. Kairaku, about the person you brought last time. That guy has become the hot topic among everyone lately. Haven't you at least heard the rumor, Yukitake? Kairaku Shunsui immediately replied before Yukitake finished his question. I have, but I still have a hard time believing it myself. To think that a student can skip grade to 6th grade only after 3 months and even defeat Asano by Zenjutsu alone, is that even possible? Now, Yucatake, I forgot to mention that Kimura is far stronger than a lieutenant even before enrolling at the academy. What? Why didn't you say that earlier? I forgot, it's not important anyway. Kairaku. Yucatake Jushiro couldn't do anything but sigh helplessly because he has been close friends with Kairaku Shunsui for so long. I've heard that he was a genius, but to think that he was more skilled than a lieutenant. Oh ho. I overheard your conversation just now, and that guy piques my interest. Can you tell me more about it, Captain Kairaku? Are you interested, Hikifune? Captain Unohana asked out of curiosity, and then, after a brief pause, said, if my memory served me correctly, the 12th Division doesn't have a lieutenant, right? Yeah, our 12th Division lieutenant position has been vacant for a while. Yeah, your lieutenant has retired a few years ago, right? Kairaku Shunsui put down his glass, and his face became unusually serious. Well, as far as I can remember, his Ryatsu is basically at captain's level, his Shunpa is pretty impressive and needless to say about his Zenjutsu. He did defeat Asano by Zenjutsu alone, after all. However, at first, he didn't know how to use Kido at all. The other three captains just looked at each other as they were surprised by Kairaku Shuansue's evaluation. At first. So, how does he fare in Kido now, Captain Kairak? Captain Unohana went straight to the point. He picked up Kido pretty quickly. It's no exaggeration to say that he truly is a prodigy. But, Kairaku, that's... Yes, even as he's now, he can be assigned as a captain, but I don't think he can use Bankai yet. The rest of them went silent as they were perplexed by Kimura Muyang's capability. That makes me think though, Captain Kairaku. You seem to know quite a lot about him. Why didn't you recruit him to your 8th Division? I recalled that 8th Division did not have lieutenant yet. Hikifune Kiryu asked right away because it's impossible that recruiting such a genius didn't cross Kairaku Shuansue's mind. Well, old Yamamoto did entrust him to me, so it goes without saying that I know quite a lot about him. However, I already had Lisa-chan for lieutenant. Although she's still immature, she'll be ready to become a lieutenant in a few years. And just like Kimura Muyang, maybe she will be promoted to captain within a few years. Hearing Kairaku Shuansue's explanation, Unohana Retsu and Hikifune Kiryu immediately understood why Kairaku Shunsui didn't recruit Kimura Muyang to his division. Well, it seems that the 12th Division will get our hands on him. It just happens that my Kido pretty good. Then let's congratulate Hikifune on finding a good lieutenant. While Kimura Muyang was still trying to get acquainted with his new classmates, his future has already been set in stone out there. I've heard the rumors about you, Kimura Muyang. Everyone says you are the unprecedented prodigy of Seoul society. Even though he was used to the praise and admiration, when someone he just knew said it right to his face, it was still embarrassing for him, so he just said humbly, you flatter me, but everyone is just exaggerating. Well, I think so too. Hee. What was it again? You think so, too? Kimura Muyang suddenly raised his head confusedly. Although he didn't show it in his face, he definitely snapped right there. There he was, playing the humble guy, hoping Aranmaru Shirshin would play along, but Aranmaru Shirshin didn't seem to think of the same thing as him. Yeah, you can't be an unprecedented genius. After all, you were already strong even before coming to the academy. Although what Aranmaru Shirshin said was on point, Kimura Muyang was still baffled by how straightforward he was. You took that right out of my mouth. I am indeed not a prodigy like everyone said. Noticing Kimura Muyang seemed a bit frustrated, Aranmaru Shirshin consoled him, well, don't let it get you down. Although you are no prodigy, that strength of yours is the real deal. Kimura Muyang was even more annoyed because it was as if Aranmaru Shirshin couldn't stress enough that he wasn't a prodigy. By the way, Kimura, you will be graduating in a few months. Which division do you want to join after graduation? Kimura Muyang pondered for a while because he hasn't really thought about it. He didn't really want to join the 8th division even though he was familiar with Shunsui. Besides, Lisa didn't seem to be fond of him. Meanwhile, Kensei and Mashiro always exchanged banters, so they were out of the question as well. Love Ikawa crossed his mind for a moment, but he immediately threw away that thought because of his hairstyle. Hirako might not be so bad. Hiyori seemed pretty decent too since she was honest with her feelings. I don't know. I guess I'll cross the bridge when the time comes. How about you? Which division do you want to join? Kimura Muyang returned the question. With such a handsome face, he should be able to attract some chicks from the 4th division. It's such a waste, Kimura. With your capability, you can join whichever division you want. Me? I'm going to join the 11th division. I've admired Captain Kurosaki Kenpachi for quite a while, and I plan to follow him forever. Huh? Kimura Muyang realized that he couldn't judge someone by appearance. To think that a hot guy like him wanted to join the brawny 11th division. Speaking of which, Kurosaki Kenpachi was truly a charming figure that even a Shin-OS student admired. You're pretty ambitious. That's not it, really. It's simply because I can enjoy even more fight if I follow Captain Kurosaki. Bloodthirst flashed in Aranmura Shishin's eyes, and Kimura Muyang could sense the Ryatsu seeping out from him. Looks sure could be deceiving. Despite having a hard time keeping himself awake, Kimura Muyang managed to tough it up through the morning class. He thought the class would cover some important lessons now that he was in the 6th grade. To his dismay, it was still some basic stuff. After sorting his belongings, Kimura Muyang decided to talk to the vice headmaster so that he'd be exempted from attending the next class because he'd rather spend that time learning more about his Zanpakuto. Kimura, see you in the afternoon. Kimura Muyang waved his hand without saying anything because he wouldn't attend the next class. The vice headmaster knew that Kimura Muyang's strength was the real deal, especially after he defeated Asano. He realized that there was nothing left Kimura Muyang could learn from the academy, and he should be able to wing it, so he was more than happy to comply with Kimura Muyang's request. As Kimura Muyang stepped out of the vice principal's room, breathing a sigh of relief. The next thing he had to do was find the perfect place to learn more about his Zanpakuto. Although he could use Shirkai now, he hasn't mastered it. Once he did, he'd then learn Bankai, which made him really pumped up. As Kimura Muyang left the academy's vicinity and headed toward the forest, a familiar voice greeted him. Yo, you're here too, Kimura. What a coincidence. Kimura Muyang immediately turned his attention toward where the familiar voice came and saw Aranmura Shishin was leaning against a big tree while holding his Zanpakuto, sweating excessively. Yeah, what a coincidence. Are you training here? Yeah, I'm training my Zanpakuto and Zenjutsu. Zanpakuto and Zenjutsu, how about Kido? Aranmura Shishin scratched his head, I don't know anything about Kido. Sorry. Kimura Muyang felt sorry for assuming that Aranmura Shishin could use Kido. Don't mind about it. Anyway, I heard you're pretty good at Zenjutsu. Can you teach me? Aranmura Shishin looked at Kimura Muyang expectantly. Seeing the hopeful look on Aranmura Shishin's eyes, Kimura Muyang had a hard time refusing his request. Okay, but I can't teach you, let's spar. After sparring for a while, Aranmura Shishin slumped weakly to the ground as he looked at Kimura Muyang, who didn't seem out of breath at all, as expected of the one who defeated the Zenjutsu instructor. You're really formidable, Kimura. I can't even touch you. It's nothing, really. I simply learned Zenjutsu earlier than you. Besides, your Zenjutsu is pretty good. At least I haven't seen any student with stronger Zenjutsu than yours. Really? Aranmura Shishin asked excitedly after hearing Kimura Muyang's honest opinion. Of course. Kimura Muyang affirmed as he recalled that even some 6th grade or 2nd grade student was nowhere near Aranmura Shishin's level. Aranmaru Shirshin was delighted to hear Kimura Muyang's straight answer even though he had a hard time believing it. Oh, Aranmaru Shirshin. Just call me Aranmaru. Okay, Aranmaru, how do you train in Zanpakuto? Jinzen. Jinzen. He felt like he had heard it in anime, but he forgot what it was. You don't know. Aranmaru Shirshin looked at Kimura Muyang weirdly and explained, the so-called Jinzen is. What? Kimura Muyang had the urge to beat him up after hearing Aranmaru Shirshin sounded like he was looking down on him. I don't know how to explain it. Fuck. Are you kidding me? Can I punch you, then? Please, don't. Aranmaru Shirshin racked his brain and tried to explain. I can't explain properly, just place your sword on the lap, and then meditated to enter your inner world and communicate with your Zanpakuto. Meditation? Kimura Muyang wondered. Is there any special meaning behind it? I don't know, simply because it's easier to enter your inner world that way, that's all. So that's how it is. Well, you can go now. You have a class coming up, right? You're just disposing of me after you're done with me. Kimura Muyang sweated profusely. If someone heard that just now, they might get a wrong idea. What time is it now? Ah. I'm late. I know. Aren't you coming? I spoke with the vice headmaster, and he said that I could skip classes. Ah. Aranmaru Shirshin screamed all of a sudden. This afternoon class is a Kido class. I suck at Kido, and on top of it, I'm late. Sensei is gonna be pissed for sure. Aranmaru Shirshin glanced at Kimura Muyang and clicked his tongue, looking a little displeased, and then hurried to the classroom. He still had so much time before the plot started, so he was not in a hurry to learn Kido. He'd rather learn Jinzen first and see for himself if he could develop his Zanpakuto abilities. With that in mind, Kimura Muyang found a secluded place, sat cross-legged as he placed his Zanpakuto in his lap, and his mind became one with his Zanpakuto. Upon opening his eyes, Kimura Muyang could see a bright blue sky with white clouds. He could feel the breeze and the refreshing smell of grass on his face. Muyang. Kimura Muyang could hear someone whispering his name right in front of his ear. After getting up, he found Cheyenne a dozen meters in front of him, fanning himself with a folding fan. There was this majestic aura about him, which really baffled Kimura Muyang. Tisk, as pretentious as always. Kimura Muyang clicked his tongue out of jealousy for Cheyenne's handsomeness and elegance. You're finally here, Cheyenne said while smiling as if he didn't hear what Kimura Muyang just said. Even though there was quite a distance between them and Cheyenne didn't speak loudly, for some reason, Kimura Muyang could hear it clearly as if Cheyenne was talking right in front of him, and he wanted to ask about this. However, he realized that he had more important things to do and this was not the time to ask for such a trivial thing. Now, tell me, Cheyenne, how can I learn Bankai? Hearing Kimura Muyang's question, Cheyenne had this baffled expression written all over his face, so he said with a smile, Bankai? You want to learn Bankai even though you can barely use Shirkai? It's too early for you. Huh? Kimura Muyang was puzzled when he heard Cheyenne mocking him and then asked, what are you saying? I can use Shirkai pretty well. Cheyenne shook his head as he looked at Kimura Muyang. He had this indescribable look on his face that Kimura Muyang had a hard time figuring out what he meant until he said, Shirkai? At that level? Stop joking, will you? Your Shirkai was nowhere near the true power of your Zanpakuto. Hearing what Cheyenne said, Kimura Muyang had mixed feelings. He thought he had a rough idea about the ability of his Zanpakuto, and it was indeed quite powerful. But now that Cheyenne said it himself that it was nowhere near the true power of his Zanpakuto, it basically denied all of his efforts until now and crushed his pride into smithereens at the same time. It turned out he was just a complacent guy who knew nothing. However, putting it another way, even now, his Zanpakuto was strong enough, and if that was nowhere near its true power, then he couldn't imagine how strong it would be once he could fully use its power. This thought sparked joy and excitement within Kimura Muyang. Seeing the look on Kimura Muyang's face, Cheyenne smiled heartily. Anyone would have the same look on their face once they realized the same thing as him. So, Kimura Muyang looked at Cheyenne nervously. What exactly is my Zanpakuto true power? And how can I master Zanpakuto it? Hee. Cheyenne just chuckled upon seeing the greedy look on Kimura Muyang's eyes. Hee. Looking at Cheyenne's cynical smile, Kimura Muyang could not help but remember how Hiyori kicked Hirako in the face as he really wanted to do the same to Cheyenne right now. What do you mean by, hee? You think I'm joking right now? Ah, I thought you would have understood my personality by now. As if I would tell you. Cheyenne still had a faint smile on his face, which made him look even more handsome, but Kimura Muyang wanted to tear that face apart so bad right now. Seeing that the annoyed look on Kimura Muyang's face, Cheyenne realized he has taken the joke a little too far and raised his hand slightly with a smile. I don't mind, however, to help you master Shikai as soon as possible. Hearing Cheyenne's words, Kimura Muyang's mood instantly changed. No one knew the Zanpakuto's power better than Cheyenne himself, so if he helped Kimura Muyang, he'd undoubtedly become even stronger. However, Kimura Muyang suddenly looked at him doubtfully. What's with the sudden change of heart? I just don't want people to think I'm a useless Zanpakuto just because my master is incompetent, that's all. A couple of veins popped on Kimura Muyang's forehead. He was hailed as the unprecedented prodigy in the history of Soul Society, yet his Zanpakuto called him incompetent, so he was obviously pissed. However, he immediately took a deep breath because if what Cheyenne said was true, then he really was incompetent. What do you want me to do? Kimura Muyang looked at Cheyenne and asked him with a serious-looking face. Oh. Looks like you've figured it out, or have you come to your senses? It doesn't matter either way, as long as you've realized your own shortcomings. Cheyenne nodded as he noticed the look on Kimura Muyang's face. That was the correct mindset if he wanted to become stronger. Let's spar. I believe you will understand once we do. Hearing Cheyenne's words, Kimura Muyang's eyes lit up. Although he did say that Cheyenne might be right, it was annoying to be called incompetent nonetheless. Now that Cheyenne himself asked to spar, Kimura Muyang was determined to beat the hell out of him and made sure he took back those words. Kimura Muyang smirked and drew his Zanpakuto immediately, while Cheyenne didn't, so he reminded him, aren't you going to draw your Zanpakuto? 'Cause here I come. Cheyenne lightly shook his head while smiling, thanks for your concern, but I'll be fine. I will draw it once I have to, and honestly, I don't think you can graze my cloth, let alone forcing me to draw my Zanpakuto. Is that so? Kimura Muyang was so annoyed that he started to wonder whether Cheyenne was really his Zanpakuto or not. Well, if you say so, play your melody, Cheyenne. Using Shikai right off the start is a wise move indeed. However, Cheyenne shook his head in dissatisfaction. That's not it. Besides, do you think that's gonna be enough? Kimura Muyang suddenly disappeared and reappeared in front of Cheyenne in the next moment, thrusting his Zanpakuto into Cheyenne. It was so fast that Shuunpa alone wouldn't be able to allow such a feat. However, to his dismay, he suddenly felt a folding fan tapping on his shoulder, and Cheyenne's figure in front of him already disappeared. He instinctively swung his Zanpakuto behind him, but he felt someone grabbed a hold of his arm, preventing him from doing so. Is this the speed and strength that you're so proud of? Cheyenne's low voice echoed in Kimura Muyang's ears. Even though Cheyenne said it softly, it really stung his ears. After letting go of Kimura Muyang's arm, Cheyenne stepped back without saying a word, giving Kimura Muyang a little time to think for himself. After a while, Kimura Muyang turned around and looked at Cheyenne, who seemed as collected as always, but the same couldn't be said to Kimura Muyang. Teach me. Even though he seemed to be on the verge of bursting into anger, upon realizing that Cheyenne's power was the real deal, he swallowed his pride and said these two words. Cheyenne smiled slightly as he folded his folded fan. I'll just tell so beforehand. Do you think Shien's power is merely to enhance your body to gain speed or power during the battle? That's nothing but the most basic way to use its power. Let me teach you how to use Shien's power properly. Damn, that hurts. As soon as Kimura Muyang returned from his inner world, his whole body was sore as he recalled what Shien told him. Using Shien to grant you explosive speed and strength is not a bad idea, but that's not where it truly shines. As you know, Shien is a support-type Zanpakuto, and it's supposed to be used outside battle, not while in battle. Outside battle? Yes, that's how to use Shien's ability optimally. So you want me to enhance my physical ability all the time? Well, you're not too far off. Shien looked at Kimura Muyang seriously. Although you can use Shien's abilities to grant you explosive strength and speed during battle, it all depends on how much load your body can handle. Thus, it will be unusable once your body can't handle it anymore, and in serious cases, it may even endanger yourself. Kimura Kanzuya did mention this once, right? Ah, come to think of it, that old man did mention something like that once. Kimura Muyang nodded. At least you know that Shien's ability can enhance your body. As you know, there was no limit to the enhancement as long as your body could handle it. With another kind of implementation, you can strengthen your body. You should know where I'm going with this now that I've said this much, right? I get it. Simply put, I'd have to use Shien's ability constantly to strengthen my body. As an otaku who had read a bunch of novels and watched a bucket load of animes, Kimura Muyang easily understood what Shien was trying to say, which was to constantly use Shien's ability to toughen his body in his everyday life. That way, he'd be not only more capable in battle but also able to withstand more intense enhancement to his body. However, his whole body was already numb and sore as he used Shien's ability now. He could only imagine how hellish his daily life was going to be if he constantly used it. Kimura, thank God you are still here, come with me. Someone is. As soon as Kimura Muyang came to his senses, he saw a Ranmaru Shirshin dash toward him, spouting nonsense. Someone is what? Can you please stop talking halfway? Kimura Muyang said irritatedly since a Ranmaru Shirshin seemed to have a habit of leaving people hanging. Kimura, your head. Head your ass. I'm asking what were you gonna say just now? Kimura Muyang was getting impatient. Ah. Oh. Aranmaru Shirshin immediately regained his focus and then excitedly said, the 8th Division 3rd Seat Lisa Yadamaru came earlier. She asked you to go to the tavern. Wow, you're actually acquainted with a seated officer. And a 3rd seat too, no less. Oh. Kimura Muyang replied. He immediately knew that Lisa and the rest were going drinking, and he was glad that they didn't forget to invite him. Oh. Is that all? Aranmaru Shirshin said incredulously. What do you want me to say? Kimura Muyang was confused by Aranmaru Shirshin's question. She's 3rd seat, you know. Aranmaru Shirshin shouted. Kimura Muyang couldn't help but smile wryly. It couldn't be helped since Aranmaru Shirshin didn't know that he was stronger than Lisa. As expected of Shino students, they truly held all Godiai 13 members in high regard. While Aranmaru Shirshin was still preaching about how amazing Lisa was, Kimura Muyang stood up after dusting his clothes and Zanpakuto and waved his hand. I'm going then, bye. Kimura Muyang used Shuanpa to get to the tavern faster before Aranmaru Shirshin could say anything back. On his way, Kimura Muyang noticed that everyone he passed by was staring at him. At first, he thought it was simply because of how handsome he was, but as he kept going, more and more people stared at him, so he just smiled wryly at everyone because he didn't know the cause behind all this. As he finally arrived at the tavern's door, Kimura Muyang sighed as it was tiring to keep smiling. He just blamed it all on his handsomeness. As the bartender led him to the room that Lisa booked, Kimura Muyang could clearly hear Hirako screaming while Hiyori was laughing with Love's weird laughter in between. He could also hear Mashiro and Kensei exchanging banter as he stood in front of the door of the room. "Why don't you come in?" Lisa's voice was heard as the door was slid open, and Kimura Muyang could see the mess inside. Hirako was lying on the floor with, of course, Hiyori stepping on his face. Mashiro was rolling on the ground, while Kensei seemed so annoyed at her, and Love was drinking his sake while laughing at them in the corner. Lastly, Lisa was the one who opened the door. Kimura Muyang was dumbfounded even though he was used to this situation. "You guys are as close as always." The moment everyone saw Kimura Muyang, a burst of laughter immediately echoed in the room. Hiyori let go of his foot from Hirako's face and pointed at Kimura Muyang, laughing her ass off. "Ha ha ha, what's with that head, Kimura?" "Hiyori, knock that out," Hirako said to Hiyori with a serious look. "Don't you see that's his new hairstyle?" Hirako had a hard time holding back his laughter. "Kimura, your hairstyle is really," Kensei pondered for a while, yet he couldn't find the right word to describe it. "Ah. Kimura, are you copying Love?" Mashiro said with a puzzled look. Kimura Muyang then looked at Love, who was slamming the table repeatedly as he laughed so loud that tears almost came out. He was so confused by everyone's reaction that he decided to turn to Lisa, hoping for an answer from her. Although Lisa also laughed at him, she didn't laugh as hard as the others. Seeing Kimura Muyang still seemed puzzled, Lisa took out a small mirror and handed it to him. "See it for yourself." Kimura Muyang had a bad feeling when Lisa handed him the mirror, and his suspicion was proven right when he looked at himself in the mirror. What he saw was all his hair that already turned spiky, which was way worse than Love's hairstyle. No wonder everyone was staring at him along the way. It turned out it wasn't because he was handsome and simply because his hairstyle was just baffling. He wanted to kill himself the moment he imagined himself smiling at people with that kind of hairstyle. Seeing Kimura Muyang has completely turned white, Hirako tried to console him. "I mean, it's your business to pick what kind of hairstyle you want to go with. Just look at Love, he doesn't seem bothered. So relax, I'll be rooting for you no matter what. But it's not like my hair becomes like this because I like it." Kimura Muyang wanted to cry as he saw everyone's faces, but not a drop came out. "So, this hair of yours is because you're training with your Zanpakuto?" "Yeah, about time you hear what I said." Kimura Muyang sighed because his explanation finally got through. After sighing, he took a sip of his sake and said, "Are you guys seriously drinking at this time of the day? Do most Godai 13 members have nothing to do like you guys or what?" "Yeah, pretty much," Hirako said while laying his head on the table while playing around with the glass in his hand. "Is this how it usually is?" Kimura Muyang asked strangely. "Well, since we're not captain or lieutenant, there's not much to do, to be honest." Hirako then added, "But Lisa is different. She is busy all day." Hearing Hirako's words, Lisa suddenly stared at him intimidatingly. "Say another word, and I'll beat you to death, Shinji." Hirako couldn't say anything back and just twitched in fear as he realized he just made a mistake. "Haha, that's what you get for letting your mouth slip, Shinji," Hiyori said smugly to Hirako, who cowered on the floor. "By the way, Kimura, I heard that you defeated Asano-senpai. That's amazing, you know. I feel like I can't really get a read on how strong you are," Kensei said suddenly. Those words attracted everyone's attention, as all of their eyes were suddenly focused on Kimura Muyang. Being asked this kind of question followed with their curious eyes, Kimura Muyang was slightly embarrassed and replied, "Ah, well, I did, but Asano-sensei is quite formidable. I'm just lucky that I can defeat him." "Oh, by the way, how did you know about that?" Lisa groaned. Who wouldn't know the prodigy who goes by the name Kimura Muyang? Your name has already spread throughout the entire Godai 13. Everyone is busy discussing which division you will go to after you graduate. Kimura Muyang awkwardly replied, "Just how much spare time do Godai 13 members have that they even look into the students? It's actually not that surprising. Shinigami's life is usually pretty boring." Besides, this is a much bigger deal than you thought. Asano-senpai was once our lieutenant at the 9th Division. He only decided to retire and teach in the academy because of his injuries and his age. Even so, his strength is the real deal, and you defeat him. Kensei even added, it's not something a student can pull off, to be honest. As expected of the one who copies my hairstyle, oh ha 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 ha. Hearing Love's words ruined everyone's mood because hairstyle had nothing to do with their topic right now. So much for you looking after Kimura, Hayori. I think he's much stronger than you. Hirako smirked at Hayori. He noticed this was the chance to mock Hayori as payback for everything she has done to him. Shortly after, a footprint was etched on Hirako's smirking face, and Hayori folded her hand proudly, look who's talking. Even as strong as you are, I always stomp your face. Hayori went quiet for a moment and then frowned at Kimura Muyang, but that's really cold of you not to tell us about such an important thing, Kimura. Kimura Muyang immediately explained his reason, well, you never ask. Besides, I figured that things like that aren't important to us drinking buddies. As long as we enjoy ourselves, who cares about such a trivial matter? Well, you have a point there. Kimura Muyang breathed a sigh of relief after hearing Hayori's answer. He was worried that he might become Hayori's next target. Everyone was a little moved when they heard Kimura Muyang's answer. It turned out he didn't bother telling everyone because he just wanted them to have a good time and just being considerate. Come on, guys, drink some more. Cheers. Cheers. After having a toast, they bonded even closer. They became closer with each other, and the atmosphere in the room became even merrier. Kimura, you'll be graduating in a few months. Have you decided which division you want to go to? You should be able to join any division with your skill. Love asked Kimura Muyang after finishing a cup of his sake. Kimura Muyang just scratched his head as he said, I don't know. I guess I'll think about it when the time comes. Now that's unbecoming. Lisa clearly didn't like Kimura Muyang's answer. Apparently, Kimura Muyang's slothfulness reminded her of her captain, which really got on her nerves. Kimura Muyang just smiled wryly. He was worried that Lisa might snap if he carelessly answered. I don't think it's that bad, though. Just go with the flow, you know. Hey, knock that off, Baldy Shinji. What if your laziness rubs on Kimura? Hayori glared at Hirako while crackling her fist. You should give it some thought. It's not good dragging it out, you know. Kensei advised Kimura Muyang. I think so too, but even so, I don't know when you tell me to choose. Kimura Muyang's brain was about to be fried as he kept pondering about which division he wanted to join. Seeing Kimura Muyang's complicated look while scratching his head, everyone couldn't help but laugh, mainly because of his hairstyle. Well, how about joining our division after graduation? A voice coming from outside suddenly mingled in the conversation. The look on everyone's face suddenly changed. Captain. Hayori immediately bounced and excitedly opened the door. The smile on her face was very bright and innocent that Kimura Muyang was surprised that she could smile like this. Seeing the person Hayori welcomed, everyone in the room immediately stood up and respectfully welcomed her, Captain Hikifune. Seeing everyone else stood up out of respect, Kimura Muyang immediately stood up as well. From what everyone said just now, he concluded that the person who just came was Hikifune Kiryu, the current 12th Division captain, who would later be promoted to 0 Division. Kimura Muyang observed her carefully. After all, she was one of the characters mentioned in the manga. Not to mention she was promoted to the 0 Division that was full shrouded in mystery, so it couldn't be helped if he was curious about her. The person named Hikifune Kiryu had purple-colored, wavy, and thick hair, charming eyes, a pointed nose, a gorgeous face, plus a hot and sexy body. Noticing Kimura Muyang was staring at Hikifune Kiryu so intently, Lisa could not help but look at Sai as Kimura Muyang turned out to be just as perverted as other men. As Hiyori closely followed behind Hikifune Kiryu with the intention to introduce her to Kimura Muyang, she saw Kimura Muyang was staring intently at Hikifune Kiryu and kicked him in anger. "What are you looking at, Baldy?" Kimura Muyang was embarrassed that Hiyori saw him being captivated by Hikifune Kiryu's sexiness. Hiyori had treated Hikifune Kiryu as her own mother, so no wonder she kicked him out of anger. Kimura Muyang racked his brain for a plausible reason. "I was reminded of my sister when I saw Captain Hikifune. Their similarities are almost uncanny that I almost mistook Captain Hikifune for my sister. I can't help but stared at her too long because I felt nostalgic, that's all," Kimura Muyang said with a flushed face. "Really?" Hikifune Kiryu chuckled, but she didn't delve any further and petted Hiyori's head instead, and Hiyori seemed like she really liked it. Shortly after, she turned around and asked Kimura Muyang, "How about it? Do you want to join our 12th Division as lieutenant?" "What?" everyone gasped. Being offered to be a lieutenant right after graduation was definitely unheard of, not to mention Kimura Muyang hasn't even graduated yet. Even among these talented Shinigamis, at most, they became a third-seat officer right after graduation. Even Lisa was still a substitute lieutenant, not an official lieutenant yet. "If you agree, you can become a lieutenant right away. It's fine if you're still inexperienced. I will show you the ropes. I believe you're qualified for this position with your talent." Hikifune Kiryu smiled, ignoring how shocking this offer sounded in the first place, and continued, "I heard that you are inexperienced with Kido, which happens to be my specialty." Seeing the Wanisan in front of him invited him with a charming smile, Kimura Muyang had no reason to refuse and immediately nodded. "I'll gladly take your offer then, Captain Hikifune. Pleased to make your acquaintance, and I'm looking forward to working under you from now on." Kimura Muyang immediately turned around and said to the dumbfounded Hiyori, who was standing next to Hikifune Kiryu, "I'm looking forward to working with you, too, 5th seat Hiyori." On his way to his dormitory, Kimura Muyang sweated profusely. Even though he did flaunt his position to Hiyori because he was kind of caught up in the moment, the thought of Hiyori beating him to a pulp like how she did to Shinji scared him to death because Hiyori clearly glared at him before he left earlier. After racking his brain for a while to find a good excuse, Kimura Muyang finally gave up as he couldn't find any decent one. He could finally relax after giving it up altogether. He decided to cross the bridge when it comes to it. After returning to the dormitory and Kimura Muyang sat on the bed as he recalled Shien's instructions, do it at least an hour for 3 times a day. It may be tough at first, but no pain, no gain, right? Kimura Muyang gritted his teeth as he psyched himself up. He recalled what his teacher said about how the plum blossomed after surviving extremely cold temperatures in his previous life. It did sound annoying, but he knew his teacher was right. Play your melody, Shien. As the Zanpakuto in his hand changed shape, Kimura Muyang immediately used its ability, and the lightning slowly circulated throughout his body. Almost immediately, his whole body was sore and numb at the same time. Had it not for his obsession to attain more strength, Kimura Muyang would have long given up because an average person wouldn't be able to withstand this tingling sensation that was even more unbearable than simple pain. Kimura Muyang made sure that all his muscles were accustomed to this training before strengthening his bones. Even though it was because this was his first time using this kind of training method, he could feel that his body became even tougher despite faint. This sense of achievement alone could keep Kimura Muyang going. As his body grew accustomed to the intensity of the lightning, he gradually increased the intensity to toughen his body even more. Eventually, Kimura Muyang could feel his muscles twitching, and as if some impurities inside him were purified by the lightning, he could feel the muscles in his body becoming more flexible and brimming with vitality. After an hour, Kimura Muyang stood back up and relaxed his muscles for a while. Even though he could barely feel any pain, his whole body was completely numb and sore. However, that was nothing if it meant getting much stronger than he currently was. Kimura Muyang couldn't help but smile wryly once he coaxed a feel on his hair that became rigid and spiky once again. Was it inevitable for him to have the same hairstyle as Love? He could only pray that his hair would return to normal after a shower. Fortunately, after rinsing his hair, it returned to normal, and he breathed a sigh of relief for that. Otherwise, he would have gone and got a buzz cut for sure. Time flew. For Shinigami, who had a long lifespan, the flow of time felt even faster for them compared to normal humans, so 6 months felt like a blink of an eye for them, and it was the time for graduation for some of Shin-O Academy's students. Hey, Kimura. The graduation ceremony will be held soon. What are you doing still enjoying yourself in the pond? Aranmura Shirshin rebuked irritatedly, do you even know how many captains will be attending today's graduation ceremony? Not only 8th Division Captain Kairaku, 12th Division Captain Hikafian, 13th Division Captain Yukatake, but also 11th Division Captain Kurioshiki is coming. This is unheard of. There used to be only 3 captains attending the graduation ceremony at most.